Chapter 543. At any time, he can't let himself fall into the rhythm of others, whether it's in battle or other things. This time, beyond Nangong's expectation, because of the sudden intervention of Uchiha Obito, which was originally just a game between the 5 Kage villages, it became a game between Akatsuki and the entire ninja world, because at that time, Nangongja wanted to take Uchiha Sasuke back to Woodleaf Ninja Village for treatment as soon as possible, so he couldn't rely on his identity as the leader of the Bloodcloth Pavilion to participate in such a division of interests and alliance of forces in time. Now it seems that he's already one step slower than the other. But that's only for now. Mashiro, get ready now. Nangongja looked very ferocious at this moment. He didn't look like a wounded beast when he was in Mashiro's arms. On the contrary, he looked more like a lion patrolling his territory in the vast savannah, imposing and unrivaled. After hearing Nangongja's words, Mashiro's face also showed a smile. Although he can accept any state of Nangongja in Mashiro's heart, the one that he likes the most, the one that makes him feel like Nangongja's true attitude is the current one. First, bring Ruru and Little Linger to the Bloodcloth Pavilion and properly settle them down. You also clearly heard the conversation between me and Watergate just now. Because of the emotional fluctuation just now, to a certain extent, it can be regarded as a falling out between me and Watergate. Although he has been saying that he and Watergate have fallen out, Nangongja's eyes didn't have any similar feelings of worry at this moment. Instead, he was very calm. Even if MT Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. At this moment, Nangongja's calm demeanor was vividly displayed. Minato already has the idea of dragging the blood-robed pavilion into the quagmire of war, and letting the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion become cannon fodder who will only contribute without any return. Once Watergate has such an idea in his heart, it won't be easy to erase it. Now, because of what I just said, Minato already knows what kind of position I have in the Bloodcloak Pavilion. This point has advantages and disadvantages for our current situation. After knowing my identity, Watergate will be more cautious in his thinking and actions, which will buy us some time to prepare. During this time, we don't have to worry about the threat from Watergate. Therefore, I think that the first thing we have to do is to make sure that Watergate doesn't have any means to threaten me. Everyone knows that I care about my family, so the first thing we have to do is to ensure the safety of Little Linger and Ruru. If necessary, we can directly send Little Linger and Ruru to the Lion Clan's alternate space. That place is a fantasy land that won't be invaded by others. Hearing Nangongja's words, Mashiro slowly nodded. After all, in the Bloodcloth Pavilion headquarters, Nangongja had secretly set up a spatial coordinate point. In this spatial coordinate point, as long as Nangongja's internal force, sword chi, and natural energy were mixed with a certain ratio, it could become the key to open the alternate space to the Lion Clan's alternate space. In Nangongja's head seal, there is enough mixed energy to open the array. Even Sasuke has it. How can Mashiro not have it? After remembering Nangongja's words, Mashiro then looked at Nangongja. Obviously, he knew that Nangongja still has the next arrangement. After settling Little Linger and Ruru, you immediately inform the Bloodcloth Pavilion to start shrinking their combat power. Gather all the disciples who are comparable to Chunin and above. Each division will provide 50 places. Gather all the top 50 disciples together, and receive protection with Little Linger and Ruru. If something goes wrong, immediately open the teleportation array and let these seeds enter the alternate space for protection. Shrinking their combat power. Such an arrangement is no different from directly preparing for war. But just now, Nangongja didn't accept Watergate's invitation. So how will Nangongja join the war? Junbai, spread what I'm about to say to the entire Blood Garment Pavilion. With that said, Nangongja's eyes flashed with light. Our Bloodcloth Pavilion is a gathering place of internal strength cultivators that is different from the mainstream forces of the shinobi world. Before I inherited the position of head, we have been living in seclusion and in a state of being bullied in this world. There is a saying that goes like this: those who are not of our clan must have a different heart. For these ninjas, we are different from them. So we have been bullied in many places. Some ninjas who are only Chunin or even Genin are walking in the shinobi world rely on their own shinobi village to do whatever they want. and some of us who are comparable to Chunin don't get the respect we deserve. That's illogical. This is what I don't want to see as the head of the Bloodcloth Pavilion and as an internal strength cultivator. And now, there is an opportunity in front of us. What is about to happen in the shinobi world will be the largest battle that may take place in the past 100 years or even hundreds of years. A large number of ninjas will participate in such a war, and I don't know how many legendary powerhouses who are famous in the shinobi world will lose their lives in it, and more legendary powerhouses will be born in such a war. The golden scale was originally a fish in the pool, but it will become a dragon when it encounters the wind and clouds. Ninjas are recognized as the golden scale, but we internal strength cultivators can also become the so-called golden scale of the dragon. Hearing Nangong's ambitious words, Mishiro's eyes became more and more blazing. Usually, Nangongja seems to be living in seclusion in the wood leaf. But does Nangongja really have no desire? Of course not. The reason why Nangongja usually looks like he has seen through the world is because these trivial things don't touch the raging flame in Nangongja's heart. This time, facing the threat from the water sect, the ambition in Nangongja's heart, which was originally just a small flame, seemed to have been poured with tung oil and began to turn into a huge fire that burned the sky. Chapter 544. That's right. From the beginning to the end, Nangongja wasn't ready to join any force. In this fourth Shinobi World War, there were actually only two hostile forces on the surface. One was the ninja allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages, including the 5 major shinobi villages and the small shinobi villages affiliated with the 5 major shinobi villages. The second was the Akatsuki that annexed the Rain Village. Neither of these forces was suitable for the blood-robed pavilion to join. The Akatsuki itself had been hostile to the blood-robed pavilion for a period of time before. Even now, many people in the blood-robed pavilion would gnash their teeth when mentioning the Akatsuki. After all, the Akatsuki had attacked the headquarters of the blood-robed pavilion before, trying to coerce the blood-robed pavilion to become their subordinate force. Although the blood-robed pavilion didn't suffer too much loss because of the appearance of Nangongja, many disciples of the blood-robed pavilion were seriously injured or even killed. Most of the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion in the headquarters were women, children, old and weak who didn't have much combat power. Although these people didn't have powerful strength, they were also the family members of most of the powerful disciples in the blood-robed pavilion. Their family members were hurt by others, which was more infuriating than their own injuries. Therefore, even if it wasn't for Nangongja's personal feelings, it was absolutely impossible for the blood-robed pavilion to unite with the Akatsuki. The ninja allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages was also not a good choice. Compared to the Akatsuki, the allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages were more bureaucratic to a certain extent, or more focused on the benefits they could obtain. Namikaze Watergate, Ai, Terumi, Mei, Anoki, and Gara. Of the 5 major shinobi villages, perhaps only Gara, who hadn't been in the position for a long time, still had some young blood and impulse in his heart. As for the other 4 Kages, they were all old foxes who had experienced the world. If the blood-robed pavilion really joined the ninja allied forces directly, it wouldn't be far from being gnawed to the bone. Nangongja didn't want to take such a risk, but he couldn't let the blood-clothing pavilion stay out of this and face the possible situation of being besieged on all sides. Therefore, what Nangongja wanted to do at this moment was to show the power of the blood-robed pavilion to the entire shinobi world, letting everyone know that the blood-robed pavilion was not an existence that could be easily manipulated by others. And the behavior that can cause such an effect is to enter the war as a third party, destroying the situation between the allied forces and Akatsuki. The blood garment pavilion was going to become a shit-stirrer that would mess up everyone's plans. I understand. I will inform the blood garment pavilion now and pass on the order you just gave as soon as possible. Mishiro looked at Nangongja, who was in high spirits and full of ambition. Her eyes were filled with love. This was the man she had fallen in love with. Although there were times when he broke down and felt helpless, he could bear any difficulties no matter what. He was a man who would never give in to anyone or anything. Sorry to trouble you, Mishiro. This war is also an opportunity for us. Although the Blood-Robed Pavilion has developed into a force second only to the 5 major shinobi villages in the shinobi world, the gap between us and the 5 major shinobi villages is still very obvious. Even the Sunagakure, which is at the bottom of the 5 major shinobi villages, is actually stronger than us. Let's seize this opportunity and really push the Blood-Robed Pavilion to the same level as the 5 major shinobi villages, or even beyond the 5 major shinobi villages. This is not for those illusory and meaningless ambitions. What I want to do is to let everyone know that I, Nangongja, and my Blood-Robed Pavilion are not a target that anyone can mess with unscrupulously. If there was someone who understood Nangongja better in this world, even his sister, Nangong-ro, couldn't compare with Mashiro. After all, Nangongja's protection of Nangong-ro was too strong. Although Nangong-ro also had the qualities of a ninja, after all, the darkness that she had seen before was deliberately filtered by Nangongja. So in fact, Nangong-ro didn't know much about some dark things. Mashiro, on the other hand, couldn't tolerate it. Although Mashiro was trained as a basic undercover with no strength when he was en route, even the shallowest darkness en route was enough to make a person unable to accept it. Mashiro was able to make a name for himself in such a place, so naturally, he had experienced a lot of things. After being saved by Nangongja, Mashiro had intervened in a lot of internal and external affairs of the Blood-Robed Pavilion with Nangongja's acquiescence, and his ability had been greatly improved. Until now, although Mashiro didn't have an official position in the Blood-Robed Pavilion, everyone regarded Mashiro as the second-in-command of the Blood-Robed Pavilion. It was precisely because he understood Nangongja that Mashiro could understand that what Nangongja said now wasn't deliberately dignified, but it was really Nangongja's own thoughts. Power was never something that Nangongja pursued. Everything that Nangongja did was actually for self-protection. Even now, if it wasn't for the aggressive coercion of Bokaze and Watergate in his home, Nangongja might not have been able to make the Blood-Robed Pavilion join the 4th Shinobi World War as a third-party force. Then I'll go arrange the relevant matters first. After walking to Nangongja's side, Mashiro slowly said goodbye to Nangongja and left Nangongja's room. Mobilizing the power of the entire Blood-Robed Pavilion wasn't something that could be done with just a few words. Mashiro might be busy for a while now, right? Watching Mashiro walk out of his room, Nangongja slowly raised his hands. The warmth of Mashiro's embrace just now seemed to still be a little bit left at this moment. A gentle smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and Nangongja's eyes became more and more firm. This kind of warmth, I will never allow it to disappear. Humph, since all of you are so greedy for the power of the Blood Cloak Pavilion and the power that I possess, then I will let all of you have a good look at how powerful the power that all of you desire is, and how terrifying a true Yama is. I didn't want to compete with the world, but the world insisted on making me fall into the mortal world. Since that's the case, I will raise my sword, sing for me, and let the world taste the sharpness of the sword in my hand. Picking up the Heaven's Disaster sword beside him, Nangongja slowly walked into the secret room of his home. With a flash of light, Nangongja had already walked into the space passage leading to the Lion Clan space. Chapter 545. There was no sun in the Lion Clan space itself, but there was a change between day and night, which was very magical. Even Liang, who guarded the space, didn't understand the mystery. But the change between day and night was not so important for a person. Sasuke slowly touched his eyes covered with white gauze with his hand, and a wry smile flashed on his mouth. It turned out that my brother relied on such a pair of eyes to face all kinds of difficulties and uses from Akatsuki and would leave alone? That's right, although Sasuke has Manjikyu Sharingan, it's only Manjikyu and not Eternal Manjikyu. So Sasuke actually suffers from serious vision decline and complications caused by a large lack of eye power like Itachi before. After obtaining Manjikyu Sharingan, although Sasuke also deliberately wanted to save his eye power, but in order to master Manjikyu Sharingan as soon as possible, Sasuke's eyes also bear tremendous pressure. And at the 5 Kages tournament, because of some instigation by Hoodlum, that is, Uchiha Obito, Sasuke couldn't control his emotions for a while, and directly appeared at the 5 Kages tournament, and launched an attack on Shimura Danzo, who was disguised as Mifune, the leader of the Land of Iron Samurai. He used Amaterasu again and again, used Keton, Kagetsuchi again, and several times when his Manjikyu Sharingan was overwhelmed, he forcibly used Susanoo. Such a high-intensity, short-term use of his Manjikyu Dojutsu naturally made Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan deteriorate rapidly. By now, Sasuke's eyes could only see some vague light, and in order to prevent Sasuke's eyes from being stimulated more, Sasuke's mother Uchiha Mikoto also made some ointment based on some prescriptions passed down from the Uchiha clan that were said to alleviate the lack of eye power, and covered Sasuke's eyes with a layer of white gauze. But although his eyes have become almost blind, Sasuke's perception is still sharp. Sasuke slowly stood up from his Sasuke's small chair. Even without using his eyes, Sasuke still walked to the gate of his courtyard with his 5 senses and slowly opened the gate. Nangong Laosher, why did you suddenly come? Sasuke said to Nangongja. His voice was a little tired, but it was also deliberately free and easy. Nangongja looked at Sasuke, whose eyes were wrapped in white gauze, standing in front of him. He didn't react for a while. After all, when he sent Sasuke to the Lion Clan's different space, Sasuke was still sleeping. Nangongja didn't know much about the condition of Sasuke's eyes, but for the drawbacks of Manjikyu Sharingan, Nangongja still knew a little about it. After all, he had a lot of cooperation with Itachi before. Hearing that Nangongja didn't talk to him for a long time, Sasuke didn't get tired of it. Instead, he seemed very enthusiastic to Nangongja and said, Nangong Laosher, why don't you come in and sit for a while? Standing at the door like this, if others see you, they will say that our Uchiha family doesn't know etiquette. Maybe because of the change in mentality, Sasuke actually said something to Nangongja. After all, in the Lion Clan's different space except for the Uchiha family and Nangong family, there are no other human beings. Hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja's slightly heavy mood also became slightly lighter. Finally, after a long sigh, Nangongja said to Sasuke, Sasuke, I need your help. For a long time, between the relationship between Sasuke and Nangongja, Sasuke was actually the one who was helped by Nangongja. He began to learn Kenjutsu under the guidance of Nangongja since he was a child, and with the approval of Nangongja, he left with Leaf Village and joined Orochimaru. After joining Orochimaru, he kept in touch with Nangongja. After killing Orochimaru, he met his brother with the help of Nangongja. For Sasuke, Nangongja was actually a very important person. Even when he was young, Nangongja's role replaced Fugaka's father position in Sasuke's heart. After hearing Nangongja's request for help, Sasuke nodded to Nangongja without hesitation, and then said, Nangong-sensei, you don't have to do this. As long as I can do it, I will naturally help you without hesitation. After hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja's expression didn't relax, but became more and more unnatural, because Nangongja knew how difficult it was for Sasuke to accept his request at this moment. I need your help. I need you, who has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan beyond Manjikyu Sharingan, to help me. With the relationship between the two, almost when Sasuke learned that there was the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan above Manjikyu Sharingan, Nangongja also knew such a thing. With the power beyond Manjikyu Sharingan and the power of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, the energy contained in such a pair of eyes is beyond imagination. And if Blood Cloak Pavilion is enough to pry open the joint layout of the 5 major ninja villages and Akatsuki to produce the 4th Shinobi World War, such a pair of eyes beyond common sense is very important. After all, Akatsuki still has the existence of Manjikyu Sharingan, and only Sharingan is the best way to fight against Sharingan. As long as Sasuke can have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, then Sasuke will be a trump card in his hand, an important means to win. But to evolve his Manjikyu Sharingan into the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he needs to transplant the Manjikyu Sharingan of his immediate family into his own eyes. Now it is known that the only person who has Manjikyu Sharingan and has a direct relationship with Sasuke is the dead Itachi Uchiha. To disturb Itachi's peace after his death, transplant Itachi's eyes into his own eyes, and then help Nangongja? No matter which choice he chooses, it will be a torment for Sasuke. After all, for Sasuke, Itachi and Nangongja are very important people to him. Now such a choice is to put Itachi and Nangongja on the scale, and let Sasuke weigh the weight of the two people. Such a thing is very difficult for Sasuke, and he is unwilling to accept it. Chapter 546. At this moment, Sasuke fell into a tangled mood as expected. Although his eyes were wrapped in white gauze, making it impossible to see the struggle in Sasuke's eyes, Sasuke's slightly frowned eyebrows exposed from the white gauze were enough for Nangongja to see the tangled feelings in Sasuke's heart at this moment. In fact, Nangongja couldn't bear to make such a move that was close to forcing Sasuke. But if he wanted to realize his plan, the power of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan was indispensable. Sasuke, I don't want you to think that I'm forcing you to make a choice between me and your brother. I know how deep the relationship between you and Itachi is. Although Itachi has left the world now, I also know that it's hard for you to accept taking out Itachi's eyes and transplanting them into your own eyes. In the end, Nangongja still didn't want to force Sasuke to make such a cruel choice. Nangongja's words were indeed from his own heart, and there was no other meaning. But when Sasuke heard it, Sasuke felt even more pressure. Nangong-sensei, Finally, after a long silence, Sasuke spoke to Nangongja. After hearing Sasuke's silent tone, Nangongja knew that he might have to find another way to let Blood Cloak Pavilion have the qualifications to enter the battlefield. After experiencing an inner struggle, Sasuke finally made a decision. Although Nangongja was also full of kindness to him, if he wanted to repay Nangongja, he would have to disturb the piece of Itachi Uchiha's body. Sasuke really didn't want to do such a thing, so Sasuke's words at this moment were actually to refuse Nangongja. But when Sasuke's words were not finished, a person slowly walked behind Sasuke. He had a square face with sharp edges and corners. His black hair was not long and was about to reach his cheekbones. But at this moment, because of the pressure of losing the Uchiha clan's patriarch and the long-term dull life in the Lion clan's different space, he looked a lot gentler. This person was the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, the captain of the Woodleaf Police Force, Itachi Uchiha, and Uchiha Sasuke's father, Uchiha Fugaku. Uchiha Fugaku slowly walked to Sasuke's side and put his hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Although Sasuke didn't stay with Uchiha Fugaku most of the time over the years, as a child, Uchiha Sasuke was still very much in awe of his father. When Fugaku's hand pressed on Sasuke's shoulder, Sasuke had a rare feeling of peace in his heart. His body, which had become slightly trembling because of guilt and torment because he wanted to refuse Nangongja's request, calmed down under Fugaku's hand. Patriarch Fugaku. Seeing Fugaku walking to his side, Nangongja didn't lose his manners and greeted Fugaku with the attitude of a junior. After hearing Nangongja's words, Fugaku's face showed an indifferent smile that was very inconsistent with his former iron-blooded style. After waving his hand, he said to Nangongja, "Nangong-sama, you don't have to be like this. Now, the real Uchiha clan is only left with us and Yuri Koyuri. So, there's no need to mention the title of patriarch anymore. Although my surname is Uchiha, I exist in this world as a husband and a father named Fugaku." Fugaku was also a person who had experienced ups and downs. Fugaku was once the patriarch of the Woodleaf clan. The power in his hands was not monstrous, but it was not much different. After experiencing the failure of the coup and the massacre of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku finally saw through the world. At this moment, his state of mind was obviously at a level that ordinary people couldn't reach. Mr. Fugaku is really a magnanimous person. For Uchiha Fugaku's current mentality, Nangongja was actually very admirable. After all, a person who could bear the pain of failure and endure the loneliness in the Lion clan's different space was worthy of admiration. I also heard a little of what you two said just now. It seems that Nangong-sama really needs Sasuke to use Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to assist you? Fugaku didn't make any pretentious gestures and seemed very frank to Nangongja and Sasuke. Although he said that he heard a little, Fugaku also heard almost all of what Sasuke and Nangongja just said. After hearing Fugaku's words, Sasuke's body trembled. Because at this moment, Sasuke didn't know what his father was planning to do at this moment. What if his father directly rejected Nangongja on behalf of him? What if his father agreed to Nangongja's request and let him transplant his brother's eyes? No matter what choice Fugaku made, Sasuke didn't think it was a good choice. After all, compared to himself, if Fugaku rejected Nangong's proposal so straightforwardly, Sasuke really didn't know whether Nangongja would be angry with Fugaku because of such a thing. And if his father forced him to transplant Itachi's eyes, Sasuke's heart was very unwilling to accept it. Although with Nangongja's character, he wouldn't necessarily turn hostile because of Fugaku's rejection, but when it came to his family, presumably, few people could maintain their calm. But to Sasuke's surprise, his father, the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fugaku, directly used his own actions to provide a second path for Sasuke and Nangongja. Uchiha Fugaku looked at Sasuke and Nangongja with a smile on his mouth and slowly said to Sasuke and Nangongja, "You two should take a look at this." While speaking, Fugaku's eyes also appeared in the representative Sharingan of the Uchiha clan, and this pair of eyes was the peak of the normal Sharingan, 3 Tomo Sharingan. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, it was not surprising to have such a pair of eyes. After all, in the world of ninja, strategy and vision may be very important, but to become the patriarch of a powerful clan like the Uchiha clan, you also need to be powerful beyond most people. Chapter 547. Just when Sasuke and Nangongja couldn't figure out what Fugaku was going to do at this moment, the 3 Tomo in Fugaku's eyes quickly rotated under the influence of chakra. The 3 Tomo were rotating at a very high speed. Generally speaking, it was because the eyes were operating to the extreme. But in the same way, there was another situation that would make the 3 Tomo rotate quickly. Manjikyu Sharingan's awakening. Although Nangongja and Sasuke weren't sure, a crazy idea was born in their hearts. The well-known 3 Tomo Sharingan of the Uchiha clan wasn't the end of the Sharingan's evolution path. Although this news wasn't known to everyone, as the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, how could Uchiha Fugaku not know? After decades of development in the Wood Leaf clan, even if the Uchiha clan didn't have any talented and powerful geniuses, there would always be people who had such a transcendental Manjikyu Sharingan under the combination of time and place. Uchiha Fugaku, as the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, naturally should know about the records of Manjikyu Sharingan. And according to the character of Uchiha Fugaku when he was the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, since he knew the potential of Manjikyu Sharingan, even if he had to pay a high price, he would definitely master such a power in his own hands. In the bloody pupils, the 3 Tomo were constantly rotating, and gradually there was a phenomenon of adhesion. 4 points and a slightly slender triangular pinwheel appeared in Fugaku's eyes. One of the 4 points was located in the center of the pupil, and the other 3 points were located at the place where the 3 Tomo were before. Although it was a little cumbersome, the characteristics of Manjikyu Sharingan were undoubtedly revealed. Yes, this was Uchiha Fugaku's Manjikyu Sharingan, 4 points pinwheel Sharingan. Seeing the Manjikyu Sharingan in his father's eyes, Sasuke's eyes suddenly became round. His father was actually hiding such a powerful force? The more one has a Manjikyu Sharingan, the more one knows how terrifying it is. But why didn't his father show his strength to fight against Konoha when the Uchiha clan was destroyed? Why didn't his father show his strength to fight against Konoha's ninja village? Even if he couldn't, he could at least let the Uchiha clan survive. Such doubts appeared in Sasuke's mind, but Sasuke knew that his father would not say these words to him. After all, Uchiha Fugaku is no longer the ambitious man before, but a hermit who enjoys a plain life. Fugaku doesn't want such a dark past to leave a shadow in Sasuke's heart. I know that head Nangong came to the Lion Clan's different space to find Sasuke, and even made such a request that would obviously put Sasuke in a dilemma. It's not for any personal purpose. As the former leader of the Uchiha clan, I have a good eye for people. There must be something that forced head Nangong to come here to seek power beyond Manjikyu Sharingan. Looking at Nangongja and Sasuke standing beside him, Fugaku's eyes flashed with a wisp of wisdom. As Fugaku himself said, during his time as the leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku has actually seen all kinds of people and is quite experienced in judging people. Nangongja is not a person obsessed with power and status. This is very obvious. But at this moment, Nangongja violated his own principles and came to the Lion Clan's different space to make such a request to Sasuke. Obviously, he has been forced to the point of no choice. Sasuke is too kind, just like his brother. Fugaku looked at Sasuke with his eyes, and in a trance, he seemed to see Itachi Uchiha's figure appear beside Sasuke. When Itachi was forced by the group of people in Wood Leaf Village to slaughter his family, the expression on his face was the same as Sasuke's now. His heart was full of entanglement and a bit overwhelmed. Fugaku has seen such an expression once, and when he saw it last time, he secretly vowed in his heart that he would not let his family have such an expression on their faces again. Since you need a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and Sasuke doesn't want to use his brother's eyes, it's better to use my eyes. Anyway, I have been living in the Lion Clan's different space, and it's useless for this pair of eyes to follow me. It's better to let them follow Sasuke. It can solve the dilemma Sasuke is facing at the moment, and at the same time, it can let head Nangong not be embarrassed by the dilemma in front of you. Isn't it killing two birds with one stone? Fugaku wants to give his eyes to Sasuke? Such a move was not expected by Sasuke and Nangongja at the same time. However, when Nangongja thought about it carefully, he realized that what Fugaku said actually had a certain degree of feasibility. But at this moment, Nangongja was unwilling to force Sasuke too much. After all, although he didn't have to put himself and Itachi on the scale, Sasuke needed to make a choice between his father and Itachi at the moment. Perhaps from Fugaku's point of view, such a solution is a good way. But can Sasuke really accept such a solution? Nangongja didn't know, and Sasuke didn't know at the moment. Because the moment Fugaku proposed to contribute his Manjikyu Sharingan, Sasuke's heart was already in a mess. His father, who has always valued interests more than his family in his eyes, has always maintained a cold-blooded face at this moment. Because of his difficulties, he wants to contribute his precious eyes. Sasuke's heart was already in a mess at the moment, and he couldn't make any judgment. Fugaku obviously also saw Sasuke's dilemma at the moment. Perhaps Sasuke couldn't see everything clearly because of his inexperience, but Fugaku, as the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, is naturally better than Sasuke in judging the situation and identifying the general situation. Although his family is temporarily living in the Lion Clan's different space, in fact, it can be said that they are completely under the protection of Nangongja. Imagine that without the support of the entire Uchiha clan, once Uchiha Fugaku's family and Yuri Koyuri set foot in the ninja world, they will be attacked by many people who covet the Sharingan. Although Nangongja may not necessarily do such a thing, Fugaku had to put his vision further and think in the most dangerous direction. Chapter 548. Sasuke's hesitation was naturally seen by Fugaku. So after showing a slightly apologetic look to Nangongja, Fugaku pulled Sasuke's arm and pulled him aside. Although Nangongja believed that he could clearly hear the conversation between the Uchiha father and son by injecting his internal force into his ears, Nangongja did not do so, because such a conversation was not what Nangongja wanted to hear. So Nangongja just used his own eyes to watch Fugaku standing opposite Sasuke. Fugaku's mouth kept opening and closing, and the expression in his eyes kept changing. After more than 10 minutes of persuasion, Sasuke finally nodded to Fugaku with difficulty. He held Sasuke's hand, just like when Sasuke taught him to walk step by step when he was a child. Nangong-sama, we have already agreed. My eyes will be handed over to Sasuke from now on. You can bring a doctor who can perform eye transplant to the Lion Clan's different space at any time, or inform us to go to the Blood Cloak Pavilion headquarters for eye transplant surgery. Fugaku cupped his hands at Nangongja and said respectfully. Nangongja looked at Fugaku standing opposite him and Sasuke, whose eyes were wrapped in white gauze. For a moment, his heart was filled with guilt. Nangongja always felt that what he was doing now was really not in line with his principles. Forcing the Uchiha father and son like this was very difficult for Nangongja to accept. With complicated emotions, Nangongja took a deep look at Fugaku and Sasuke, then nodded and said to Fugaku and Sasuke, "This time, I am indeed a bit abrupt. Because of my own personal reasons, you have to suffer such a choice." For enemies, Nangongja naturally did not hesitate to use iron-blooded means, but for people like Sasuke, who had a good relationship with him, Nangongja still found it difficult to be ruthless. Nangong-sama, you don't have to be so concerned. There are many things in this world that we can't control. There are many things that we can't do just because we want to. I can understand your difficulties. Fugaku was different from Sasuke. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku had done many things that went against his conscience out of helplessness. Now Nangongja was already a gentle person. If other people were in Nangongja's position, they would definitely be more ruthless than Nangongja, and not feel guilty like Nangongja was now. In that case, I'll take my leave. When I finish all the arrangements in the Bloodrobe Pavilion, I will send someone to perform the eye transplant surgery for both of you. At this moment, Nangongja didn't know why he only wanted to leave Sasuke and Fugaku. At this moment, although Sasuke and Fugaku didn't say anything harsh, for Nangongja, their eyes were like sharp knives constantly stabbing into Nangongja's heart. This was the first time he did something against his conscience, and this feeling didn't make Nangongja feel comfortable. Nangongja left the Lion Clan space as if he was running away, while Sasuke and Fugaku stood in the courtyard of their home, silent for a long time. In the end, they could only end this situation after Fugaku sighed. At this moment, not only Nangongja and Uchiha's father and son were suffering, but a similar scene also appeared in Woodleaf Village. Because the Fourth Shinobi World War was about to break out, Watergate has been working hard to improve the strength of Woodleaf Village during this period of time, looking forward to making Woodleaf Village stand out in the coming battle and seize more benefits. At this moment, it was already late at night. Even the streetlights on Woodleaf Street were extinguished because of the late night. She took out her keys and gently opened the door of her house. She tiptoed and took off her shoes. Then, she slowly hung her coat on the hanger. For some reason, a feeling of fatigue suddenly hit Watergate's heart. During this period of time, because of the Fourth Shinobi World War, Watergate almost returned to his home in the middle of the night. Although when he was in the Hokage's office, he dealt with all kinds of decisions that could affect the life and death of thousands of people, that feeling made Watergate very addicted. But when he returned home alone, when all the halos on his body faded away, the emptiness in Watergate's heart emerged uncontrollably. Is everything I'm doing right now right or wrong? Watergate didn't know what the answer was, because he was already riding a tiger and couldn't get off. Woodleaf, the war machine, was already operating because of the news of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Once the war machine Woodleaf was started, it would only stop after obtaining enough benefits. Sigh. Minato let out a long sigh and walked to his kitchen with an indescribable feeling. He opened the refrigerator door and took out a bottle of cold oolong tea. He took a few sips of the cold oolong tea and poured it into his mouth. Oyaji, can I talk to you about something? Just when Watergate's expression was still in a trance, suddenly the voice of his son Naruto suddenly appeared behind him. Did he completely let down his guard when he was at home? What was the reason for this? Was it because of physical exhaustion or mental exhaustion? Having no time to think about such a question, Watergate put down the oolong tea in his hand, trying to make his expression more gentle, and said to Naruto, "It's already so late, but you haven't slept yet. It seems that you have been preparing to tell me what you are going to say for a long time. Since you have hesitated for so long and finally mustered up the courage to say it to me, then don't be so shy, just say it directly. My family's Naruto's ninja. Isn't it straightforward?" Looking at Naruto, Watergate gently pulled Naruto's hand and took Naruto to the living room. He turned on a small night light that was not so bright. Watergate and Naruto's faces became much softer under the slightly orange light. Watergate sat quietly on the sofa, carefully looking at his son. Time really flies. When he first met Naruto, although Naruto didn't like him, he always looked so bright and positive. But as he grew older, although Naruto was still so bright, his eyebrows unconsciously became a bit heavier. Is this the price of growing up? Chapter 549. Finally, after struggling for a while, Naruto gritted his teeth and opened his eyes as if he had made a decision. He said to Minato, who was sitting opposite to him, "I'm not going to give you a chance to fight me. Oyaji, I don't know if you still remember the scene when Pain's Rakuto attacked Woodleaf Village?" When he heard Naruto suddenly talking about Pain's attack on Woodleaf Village, Watergate's expression suddenly became serious. For Watergate, although defeating Pain was very important, such a battle that caused heavy losses to Woodleaf Village was also a very disgraceful mark on Watergate's resume as Hokage. Watergate, who has always been the best Hokage in history as his goal, was actually very unwilling to accept such a disgraceful mark. But at this moment, Naruto was obviously immersed in his own emotions. He didn't notice what kind of expression Watergate had on his face. Although I know that I am not the most powerful person, I still think that I have some ability to protect myself. Indeed, although Naruto at the moment is not the strongest in Woodleaf Village, but Naruto is also comparable to an ordinary Jonin without using the power of Nine Tails mode. And once the power of Nine Tails sealed in his body is activated, then Naruto's combat power will definitely soar rapidly. But even so, when Naruto recalled the disastrous scene when Pain attacked Woodleaf Village, Naruto's heart was full of powerlessness. Even if he fully released the power of Nine Tails that he can stimulate, and even if he desperately stimulated all the power of Nine Tails, he doesn't seem to have the power to protect himself. As a ninja, he has a different kind of worship for power. When Naruto realized his weakness, the feeling of suffering in his heart was completely imaginable. When his mother took his hand and took him to the Shikatsu forest, when he passed by the ruins, he heard the sad and desperate cries of his neighbors, but he almost left without hesitation. Such a thing was something that Naruto thought he would never do, but such a thing was still done by himself. Because of the powerlessness, because of the guilt of ignoring the lives of others. I want to become stronger. I want to have the power to carry out my own ninja path. I want to be a person who protects others, not a person who is protected by others. I want to be a warrior who can stand proudly on the battlefield, not a powerless person who is waiting for others to save him. Naruto's voice became more and more passionate. He even seemed to have forgotten that it was already late at night, and his mother had already stepped into the land of dreams. Now Naruto didn't want to care about anything, because Naruto had been tortured by his own emotions for a long time. Under the guidance of Watergate, Naruto was finally able to express all the emotions in his heart. This feeling made Naruto no longer want to think about anything meaningless. Looking at the child in front of him, who had already revealed some of Kyuubi's aura, and looking at the young man who was clenching his fist and hoping that he could become stronger, Minato's thoughts involuntarily returned to the time when he was also a young man. Was he like Naruto back then, tortured by the feeling of powerlessness that surged in his heart? Was he also affected by the same emotions at that time, and then tried all kinds of methods to make himself stronger without hesitation? But now, he was addicted to the desire for power and couldn't extricate himself for a long time. Initially, he simply wanted to expel the helplessness in his heart to grow stronger. However, he didn't know when it started to slowly decline. Naruto? Looking at his own child, Minato said slowly, "Don't worry, we're not gods. We can't make everything go according to what we want. In many cases, the lack of manpower is the biggest obstacle that stands in our way. However, such an obstacle isn't something that can be overcome with willpower alone." Watergate's tone was full of heaviness, because what Watergate said now was the conclusion that Watergate came to during his continuous growth. After hearing Watergate's words, Naruto's eyes also became a little dim. Although Naruto wanted to refute, he couldn't find a reason to convince himself and Watergate. But, seeing Naruto's dim eyes, Watergate suddenly changed the thread of discussion, and the heavy atmosphere was suddenly broken by Watergate. Even if there is a lack of manpower, so what? We have been training ourselves step by step from being weak to become strong. It's a good thing to be able to recognize your own weakness, because it's precisely because you can see your own weakness. Only by facing our own weakness can we have the opportunity to continue to grow. Hearing Watergate's words, Naruto's eyes finally lit up. Watergate was right. No one was born to be strong. All the strong gradually became strong step by step from being weak. Since I'm not strong enough now, I shouldn't run away, but face my own weakness. Yes, I'm weak, but I won't always be weak, because I'll do my best to make myself strong. Don't worry, Naruto. I'm very pleased that you can say such words to me. I've already seen your will. As your father, I can't just abandon you like this. I'll do my best to make you stronger. Sure enough, it's time to consider the suggestion made by the 4th Reikage AI during the 5 Kage tournament. In fact, it took time for a person to become strong. But as the goal of Akatsuki in the 4th Shinobi World War, Watergate hopes that Naruto can also have a certain degree of self-protection. And the means to make Naruto strong quickly has been hidden in Naruto's body. The head of the Nine Tails, the strongest demon fox, Nine Tails. If Naruto can fully master the power of the Nine Tails in his body, then naturally it can make Naruto's strength advance by leaps and bounds. Just like the Hachibi column force of the Cloud Village, although his powerful lightning taijutsu is very eye-catching. But what really makes him a strong person is that he can perfectly control the power of the Hachibi in his body. Chapter 550. After the end of the main agenda of the 5 Kages tournament, as the 4th Reikage, AI secretly invited the 4th Hokage, Watergate, for a secret meeting. As the initiator of the 5 Kages tournament, the 4th Reikage naturally wouldn't propose such a proposal to unite the 5 great shinobi villages without knowing anything about the Akatsuki. But it was precisely after understanding the situation of the Akatsuki that AI became more afraid of them. In the early days, the Akatsuki was still okay. It was just an organization with some power in the Rain Country. But after experiencing a low point, that is, after being annihilated by the Rain Country's leader demigod, Hanzo the Salamander, the Akatsuki became different. The Akatsuki that was originally open and aboveboard suddenly began to turn into a half-light and half-dark organization, and in the end, even directly became an organization lurking in the dark. The purpose of the Akatsuki was to provide shelter for the weak, although it was a bit too idealistic, but it was full of the glory of humanity. But after they sneaked into the darkness, all their actions that carried the brilliance of humanity and ideals disappeared. The Akatsuki seemed to have become an organization in the blink of an eye, and no matter what kind of task, as long as it can collect money, the Akatsuki was willing to accept it. And from the outside, it seems that the Akatsuki also became strong by virtue of the change in style. But whether it was AI or Watergate, as the leader of a super force, they could see that the Akatsuki definitely didn't rely on such means to rise. Thinking about the strong people who joined the Akatsuki in the past, how could they be won over just by relying on money? Well, except for the big money fan of Kakuzu. The remaining people of the Akatsuki were all unruly existences. There was nothing that could really attract them, so why should they risk their lives for the Akatsuki? And how many years has it been since the Akatsuki was established? A lot of things can't be saved by just relying on money. So for the sudden appearance of Uchiha Obito in the 5 Kages tournament, although most people don't believe that he is really Uchiha Madara, but he must have a close relationship with Uchiha Madara. An organization that inherited the legacy of Uchiha Madara sounded like it could barely make a name for itself. Uchiha Madara was once called Azura. Even if it's just his legacy, it's not so easy to deal with. Therefore, in order to let the ninja allied forces accumulate more power, A went to Namikaze Watergate. Because in the hands of Woodleaf, there was a powerful existence that no one could ignore, the Nine Tails Fox Column Force, who was also the child of the 4th Hokage Wave Watergate, Uzumaki Naruto. The fact that Naruto is Column Force is actually not a completely undetectable news. As long as the time of Naruto's birth, the time when the Nine Tails attacked Woodleaf, the physical characteristics of Naruto, and the few things that can be collected about Naruto's performance during missions in the ninja world, it's easy to judge the identity of Naruto. So a timely proposed to Watergate to let his younger brother Killer B take Watergate's son Naruto to train to control the tailed beasts in his body. If Naruto can perfectly control the tailed beasts in his body, it will indeed be a supplement to the high-end combat power of the ninja allied forces. More importantly, such an act can let us show enough goodwill to Watergate. After all, I have already asked my brother to take your son to train together. Woodleaf's mastery of the Nine Tails is not so good for the Cloud Village, and there is even a risk of making Woodleaf stronger. I'm already willing to take such a huge risk to make your son stronger, to let your son have the ability to protect himself and even become an important force in the war. Even if you don't want to be loyal to me, you should at least have a closer relationship with me, right? After all, the Ninja Allied Forces is the union of the 5 great ninja villages. There are too many interests involved. Even the arrogant 4th Reikage has to find an ally who can make him feel assured enough to advance and retreat with him. The other 3 ninja villages may also start to draw each other at this time, so that they can get enough power to speak in the ninja allied forces. Originally, Watergate didn't want to let Naruto and Killer Bee go to the Holy Land in the Land of Lightning to control the tailed beasts in his body. After all, there is also a descendant of the Uzumaki clan who is extremely good at taming tailed beasts in with Leaf, his wife, Naruto's mother, Uzumaki Shina Kushina. However, the Uzumaki clan's way of taming the tailed beasts is actually more similar to applying a lot of sealing techniques, so taming the tailed beasts is still not as fast as the Rakich's proposal for him. But after seeing Naruto's performance and mood at the moment, Watergate knew that such a trip to the Land of Lightning was actually inevitable. After hearing his father's promise to become stronger, Naruto's eyes also burned with flames. Naruto, I do have a way to make you stronger quickly, but such a thing as quickly becoming stronger contains a huge risk. Originally, I didn't intend to let you become stronger in this way, but now that I see the strong desire in your heart, I think I should tell you. Looking at Naruto, Watergate said with a slightly serious tone, you know that the absolute king of the tailed beasts is sealed in your body, the 9 tails. With the teaching of your mother and the help of Jiraiya-sensei, you have been able to control part of the power of the 9 tails in your body. This power can make you strong in an instant, but it also has the danger of losing control. After all, most of the tailed beasts are arrogant and unruly. They won't let you use their power so easily. I believe you have a deep understanding of this. Listening to Watergate's words, Naruto also nodded in agreement. When he was on the bridge of heaven and earth, the tailed beast in his body went berserk and made a big mess. If it wasn't stopped in time, perhaps he would have already lost his self-consciousness and become a killing machine, or even die because of it. But the tailed beasts are not really uncontrollable. In the Kumo-Shinobu village, there is a person who can perfectly control the tailed beast in his body, Column Force, and Yandame Raikage also proposed to me to let the Hachibi Column Force teach you how to use the power of the tailed beast in your body. This is your opportunity to become stronger. Chapter 551. Naruto and Watergate talked for a long time all night. It wasn't until the east of the sky outside the window that Watergate finally let Naruto go back to rest. Watergate didn't expect that he would become so talkative and long-winded when it came to his family. For the whole night, except for the first 1 or 2 hours, Watergate talked about some practical things about cultivation. In the end, it all turned into reminding Naruto to pay attention to his safety. Watching Naruto covering his mouth and yawning as he walked towards his room, Kuroto couldn't help but smile. Watergate looked at the time and found that there was still some time to rest, so he walked slowly to his room upstairs. Stepping up the stairs step by step, Watergate came to the door of his room, but saw that the door of the room was not closed. Instead, it was ajar. Watergate's mouth flashed a smile. He gently pushed open the door of the room and walked into the room. At this moment, Shina Kushina seemed to be sleeping. She covered herself with a quilt. Her breathing seemed to be even, as if she had really fallen into a dream. With a smile, Watergate slowly walked to Shina Kushina's side. He put his mouth next to Shina Kushina's ear and said softly, "Okay, stop pretending. Naruto, that silly child, can't find you. But how can I not find you? You have been lying in the corner listening to us for a long time. I think you should have heard everything, right?" Shina Kushina obviously knew that she couldn't fool Watergate by pretending to be asleep, so she directly lifted the quilt covering her body and looked directly at Watergate. Perhaps because of pretending to be asleep just now, Shina Kushina's hair was slightly messy, but what was more eye-catching was Shina Kushina's red and swollen eyes at the moment. In this world, no mother wants to put her child in danger. Every mother is willing to be fearless in order to protect their child's safety. A woman is weak, but a mother is strong. Shina Kushina agreed with Watergate's words to Naruto about sending him to Kumo-Shinobu village to control tailed beasts. But how can it be so easy to control a tailed beast? In the face of the rebellious tailed beast, even the Uzumaki clan relied on their special body and superb sealing ability to tame the tailed beast step by step. So far, only a handful of people have been able to perfectly control the Kyuubi. The most recent person who was able to do so was Uchiha Obito, the masked man who forcibly controlled the Kyuubi with his Manjikyu Sharingan when the Kyuubi invaded Konoha more than 10 years ago. From this, it can be seen that the conditions to control a tailed beast are extremely harsh. Whether Naruto can control the 9 tails in his body or not, no one can give a clear answer. But seeing the excited expression on Naruto's face, Shinakushina, who wanted to go out and scold Watergate again and again, and make Watergate give up such a dangerous plan, could only resist the urge to rush forward again and again. Can't we change the way? I can teach Naruto more exquisite sealing techniques. You can also teach Naruto more wind release ninjutsu. These are all ways to make Naruto stronger. Do we have to let Naruto become stronger in such a dangerous way? Shinakushina looked at Watergate. Her eyes were filled with tears again. At this moment, Shinakushina didn't have the spirit of blood red pepper in the past. She was simply a weak woman. Watergate didn't explain to Shinakushina the necessity of Naruto going to Kumo Shinobu village to practice, because Watergate knew that Shinakushina already knew these things, so there was no need for him to explain so much. Watergate just slowly sat beside Shinakushina and hugged Shinakushina into his arms. He stretched out his hand and gently stroked Shinakushina's soft red hair, trying to calm Shinakushina down. Shinakushina, you are Naruto's mother, and I am also Naruto's father. If I had a choice, I would definitely want my child to live a stable and peaceful life, and I don't even want him to become a ninja. But we don't have a choice. When we were born into this world, we had no choice. We have to train Naruto to be a killing ninja, because only by killing can he not be killed by others. Watergate finally spoke, but he didn't have the usual passionate and generous tone. Instead, it was full of helplessness. Now the Akatsuki has declared war on the entire ninja world, and their goal is very clear, that is, Column Force, who has the 9 tails. Naruto is their goal, and in order to extract the 9 tails from Naruto's body, they will only use all kinds of means to attack Naruto. We can indeed protect Naruto for a while, but we can't protect Naruto for a lifetime. Temporary stability and long-term stability, we have to make a choice between them. Speaking of this, Watergate's eyes flashed with a trace of firmness. Accepting the trial is indeed a dangerous thing, but such danger can give Naruto the opportunity to protect himself. Whether it is a young eagle or a sparrow, they must learn to fly with their wings. As parents, what we have to do is not only to give our children enough protection, but more importantly, learn to let go of our hands, so that they can live in this world stronger. Shinakushina listened to Watergate's words, but felt that Watergate's tone was obviously a bit wrong. Raising her head to look at Watergate, Shinakushina found that Watergate, who was usually very strong, also had red eyes at this moment. When he saw Shinakushina looking at him, Watergate blinked, trying to force back the tears in his eyes, but instead, a drop of tear was squeezed out of his eye. The warm and even scalding tears dripped on Shinakushina's face, making Shinakushina completely understand the entanglement and reluctance in Watergate's heart at this moment. Gently wrapping her arms around Watergate's waist, Shinakushina fell into Watergate's arms, listening to Watergate's heartbeat. That's right, after all, the two of them couldn't protect Naruto for a lifetime, so they had to let go in the end. Although Minato and Kushina were very reluctant to let go, Chapter 552. In the Bloodcloth Pavilion, a high platform had been set up in the huge square that was used for morning and evening practice. The high platform was divided into 2 levels. The first level was composed of the 5 colors representing the 5 elements: black, green, red, yellow, and white. In the middle of each color, there was a hollowed-out chair carved with the pattern of the 5 elements. Obviously, this was the seat prepared for the 5 altar masters of the Bloodcloth Pavilion. On this level of the 5-colored high platform, there was a blood-colored platform that looked like it was watered with blood. Unlike the complicated decorations on the chairs of the 5 elements altar masters, this seat at the highest level looked a little too ordinary. There were no hollowed-out decorations, nor was there any huge specifications. It was just a very simple chair. However, such a simple and plain chair wasn't as simple as it looked. The chair's dark red surface and the dragon-shaped patterns entwined around it gave the chair a dignified feeling. Next to the chair, a short square table made of the same material was placed. A shelf that was obviously used to hold a long sword was placed on the table. At this moment, the blood-cloth pavilion had become a little noisier than before. After all, Nangongja had ordered all the outside forces of the blood-cloth pavilion to return and prepare for war. And Mashiro naturally carried out Nangongja's orders faithfully. In the middle of the blood-robe pavilion, which was large enough to accommodate at least 1,000 people, the people standing in the square weren't ordinary disciples of the blood-robe pavilion, but the backbone of the blood-robe pavilion. Each of them had the strength of a chunin or even an elite chunin or above. Although there were many people, there wasn't much noise. Sometimes, the sound of nearly 1,000 people in the square couldn't even be compared to the occasional chirping of birds and insects from the surrounding forest. However, silence didn't mean silence. Now, everyone standing in the square had bright eyes at this moment. Many of them even exuded a dangerous aura. The words that Nangongja asked Mashiro to pass on to all the disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion were naturally heard by these people. Originally, when the Blood Garment Pavilion existed as a hidden force, because it was isolated from the world, it did not have much desire for profit or fame. However, because of Nangongja's ascension to the throne, everything changed dramatically. Nangongja needs to rely on the power of the Bloodcloak Pavilion to protect his family, which is very important to him. The Bloodcloak Pavilion also relies on Nangongja's understanding of the shinobi world and Nangongja's own strength to gradually change from a hidden force to a powerful force second only to the 5 great shinobi villages. Due to the rise in their status and the benefits that were constantly falling into their lap, it was clear that the Blood Garment Pavilion, from top to bottom, had become more ambitious. That feeling was like a ferocious beast that had always been eating vegetables was suddenly fed a piece of fresh and juicy meat. The desire for meat that came from the bottom of his heart was enough to overcome all difficulties and obstacles. These were the so-called ferocious beasts, which were also the so-called humans. Finally, after a long wait, the 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar came out wearing large robes that represented the colors of their respective 5 elements. Aoki, Akatsuki, Hutu, and Bisui were the original altar lords of the 5 elements altar, and the one who replaced the rebel sharp metal was Mashiro, who has been following Nangongja. However, all of this didn't cause any waves. For the disciples of the other 4-5 elements altar, it didn't matter who the altar lord of the sharp metal altar was. For the disciples of the sharp metal altar, after their original altar lord rebelled, they were directly under the leadership of Nangongja, the head of the Bloodcloak Pavilion. In most cases, Nangongja was not so keen on attending some of the meetings of his own forces, so Mashiro presided over the meetings for Nangongja. Everyone had witnessed Mashiro's ability. Today's meeting required the altar lords of the 5 elements altar to be present, but Nangongja was the head and an altar lord. In order to let everyone understand that the 5 elements altar was on the same level as him, Nangongja couldn't directly give the title of Sharp Metal Altar Lord to himself. Therefore, he gave Mashiro the right to represent the Sharp Metal Altar in the meeting. After the 5 altar lords appeared, they did not immediately take their seats. Instead, they all stood at the front of the high platform. The 5 of them stood in a row and looked at the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion standing in front of them. Aoki was the most senior among the 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar, so he stood in the middle and also in the front of the 5. Looking around at the many core disciples standing in front of him, Aoki's eyes were full of emotion. Although he was an old man, Aoki wasn't the kind of stubborn old man who didn't know how to adapt. In the past, the Bloodcloak Pavilion had always stayed out of things and didn't participate in anything in the ninja world. They just lived in the mountains by themselves. This kind of existence couldn't be said to be bad. After all, this kind of existence allowed them to live in a very stable environment for development. But is stability really a good thing? No matter how long a force without tension or oppression could struggle at death's door, it would eventually be drowned in the torrent of history. Looking at the current Bloodcloak Pavilion under the leadership of Nangongja, its scope of influence has almost expanded to the entire ninja world, becoming the first force under the 5 great ninja villages. More importantly, after Nangongzhi took over, the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion became more energetic. Many of the disciples who were originally idling around had unknowingly undergone a change. Just like the nearly 1,000 disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion standing in front of him now, who were comparable to Chunin and even elite Jonin. In fact, more than half of them stood out after Nangongzhi took the position. Many of the Blood Garment Pavilion's disciples no longer addressed Nangongzhi as head of the throne or king of hell in terms of fame. Instead, they addressed him as Lord of Resurgence from the depths of their hearts. Slightly clearing his throat, Aoki slammed his crutch on the high platform and said to everyone, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. Welcome, Lord." Chapter 553. After hearing Qing Mu's old but powerful voice, every disciple of the Blood Cloth Pavilion became excited. After all, Nangongzhi's reputation among the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion was so high that no one could reach it. Perhaps there was a certain degree of estrangement between the 5 element altars of the Blood Cloth Pavilion, but as long as Nangongzhi gave any order, the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion would wholeheartedly unite to carry out Nangongzhi's order. "Welcome, Chief! Welcome, Chief! Welcome, Chief!" Under Qing Mu's lead, all the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion standing in the square began to cheer. The voices of nearly 1,000 people, which were supported by internal strength, radiated in all directions like a tsunami. The disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion half-knelt toward Nangongzhi's position on the high platform. Qing Mu and the other 4-5 element altars' altar masters also bowed toward Nangongzhi's position. Amidst the cheers, Nangongzhi's figure finally appeared slowly. Unlike usual, Nangongzhi did not wear the loose black and red robe that he usually liked to wear. Instead, he wore the white robe that represented the Blood Cloth Pavilion. Nangongzhi wore the white silk robe with fine veins, and a large part of it was stained with blood. Nangongzhi was like a banished immortal who had fallen from the heavens into the mortal world. He did not have the slightest bit of mortal aura, as if he was incompatible with the world but had unexpectedly appeared in this world. Nangongzhi held his black calamity sword and slowly floated down from the sky. Nangongzhi's body didn't emit any powerful aura at this moment. He was just like a feather that was being blown by the wind. A feather dyed in blood slowly fell from the sky. Standing in front of his position, Nangongzhi slowly shook the hem of his robe as if he was flicking off some dust on it. Then he casually sat down. Nangongzhi casually tossed his Heaven's Calamity sword into the air and released a few strands of internal energy from his fingertips. The internal energy hit the hilt of the Heaven's Calamity sword and adjusted its position in the air. When all of the internal energy hit the Heaven's Calamity sword, the Heaven's Calamity sword landed firmly on the sword rack on the short table beside the chair. After doing all this, Nangongzhi finally slowly raised his head and looked at the many disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion standing in the square. "Get up." Nangongzhi's voice was not loud. It even sounded like a whisper. When Nangongzhi spoke, he did not use internal strength to support his voice. However, his voice was able to drown out the cheers of nearly 1,000 people in the square. Everyone could feel the vibrations in their vocal cords, and they were very sure that they were shouting with all their might. However, the strange thing was that the world returned to silence at this moment. Other than Nangongzhi's murmurs, all other sounds seemed to have been erased. The people gathered here were all cultivators of internal strength. Of course, they did not think that such a miraculous scene was a coincidence. The 5 altar lords of the 5 elements altar, who were also standing on the high platform, naturally understood the reason for such a situation at this moment. Force was a powerful force that an internal force cultivator would obtain when they succeeded in their cultivation. In the process of battle, once an internal force cultivator used the force they comprehended, they would be able to greatly increase their own strength. On the other hand, those who stood on the opposite side of the internal force cultivator would be greatly suppressed. It could be said that potential was an important means that internal strength cultivators could use to resist the endless stream of strange ninjutsu. However, potential was not the end. On the contrary, potential was a step to a more powerful stage. When an internal strength cultivator who had potential understood his own heart and his cultivation reached a certain level, he would have a more powerful force, domain. There was a saying that went like this: the land under the heavens was the king's land, and the land under the heavens was the king's vassal. Domain was the ability to turn a certain area into a space that one could completely control. One would be able to make all things in this space obey. At this moment, Nangong was using the legendary domain that was above potential. Moreover, it covered an area of nearly 650 square meters. At this moment, Nangong was showing his muscles, and he was using the most simple and direct method. I am your leader, and I have the power to protect you. Although we are about to face a very difficult battle, and we may face many dangers. Some of us may even be seriously injured or even lose our lives. But you only need to know that your leader is strong. He is strong enough to lead you to the final victory. All of your sacrifices will not be in vain. You will appear in front of the world as a victor. The 5 sanctum leaders of the 5 elemental sanctum who were standing closest to Nangong could feel how powerful the domain that Nangong released was. They, who were proficient in tactics, naturally understood Nangong's intention the best. Mashiro, who was dressed in a white robe with golden patterns, was also looking at Nangong, who was sitting on the high platform with a face full of admiration. The gentle Nangong at home was the Nangong that Mashiro liked. However, the current Nangong, who was filled with an invincible aura and stood at the peak of everything, was more like the Nangong that he first met. Nangong seemed to feel that it was about time. He immediately retracted the domain that he used to suppress the voices of others and show off his muscles. In fact, it was quite stressful for Nangong to use the domain on such a large scale. The fact that Nangong was able to maintain it for so long was the result of him trying his best. After retracting the domain, Nangong's hand, which had been resting on the chair, twitched slightly. However, in order to let the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion be confident in the upcoming battle, Nangong felt that no matter what price they had to pay, they should be filled with confidence. Chapter 554. While the 5 great shinobi villages were actively preparing for war, and Nangong of the Bloodcloak Pavilion was ambitious, the Akatsuki in the Rain Village naturally didn't stay idle. Uchiha Obito, who had changed his makeup, was holding Uchiha round fan in his hand, sitting on a huge black stone chair. Obito's 3 Tomo Sharingan and Rinnegan were casually staring at the vast space in front of him, while the huge Geto Mazo appeared behind him. 7 of the 9 eyes on the Geto Mazo's face were completely open at this moment, and the remaining 2 eyes were half open, and the other one was tightly closed. Is everything ready? Obito looked at Black Zetsu standing beside him and asked slowly. At this moment, Obito's voice became low under Obito's intentional control, and it seemed to have an unexpected sense of majesty. Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Obito, was slightly surprised. If he didn't know that the one sitting beside him was Uchiha Obito, he would have faintly felt that Uchiha Madara was reborn in his heart. Uchiha Obito, really a person good at hiding and disguising. Although he was slightly surprised in his heart, Black Zetsu didn't show such a surprise. Black Zetsu nodded to Obito with an expressionless face. Then he stretched out his hands in front of his body. He slowly opened his clenched fists, then slowly pushed his palms upwards. Almost at the same time when Black Zetsu pushed his hands up, a figure that was very similar to White Zetsu slowly emerged from the ground. White Zetsu appeared one after another, one after another. After more than 10 minutes, this kind of appearance didn't stop. Obito seemed to be a little tired, and his eyes turned to Kabuto, who was standing on the other side of him, wearing a large snake-patterned robe. As if he felt Obito's gaze, Kabuto also turned to look at Obito. He gently pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and a strange smile appeared on his face as he said to Obito, "Please rest assured, during this period of time, with the help of Akatsuki, I have found enough DNA of the deceased people. Now, I am fully prepared, although I can't guarantee that I can fully exert the strength of these deceased people when they were alive, but 70% to 80% of their peak strength is not a problem. At the same time, saying this, Yakushi glanced at Black Zetsu, who was standing opposite him. Yakushi then said to Obito with a hint of mischievousness, I have done my best during this period of time to increase the strength of the deceased people we can grasp to 95% of their peak strength. After all, the Azura who made the whole ninja world tremble once again made everyone tremble under his power. The strongest person who had already passed away. Although Kabuto deliberately used such a slightly euphemistic tone, almost ridiculing Obito, but in fact, he was talking to Black Zetsu. But Black Zetsu was completely unmoved, and didn't have the feeling of losing control of his emotions when he saw Uchiha Madara resurrected by Edo Tensei. After seeing the reaction of Black Zetsu and Kabuto, the corners of Obito's mouth, which was hidden under his mask, curled up slightly. It seems that the effort he spent on Black Zetsu was not in vain. For Black Zetsu, although Uchiha Madara was still worthy of respect, but he was no longer willing to sacrifice everything for Uchiha Madara. Looking at Kabuto, at this moment, Kabuto's attitude of wanting to show his value in various ways made Obito very happy. Because people who want to show their value through various actions are often people who lack self-confidence in their own heart. For Kabuto's past, Obito didn't dare to say that he was clear about it, but he was clear about 50% to 60% of it. A person who is extremely eager to find his true self, as long as such a person wants to, there are many ways to control him. The entire White Zetsu Legion has the strength of a Chunin. Such a number advantage is enough to crush any ninja village. In terms of high-end strength, Kabuto's Edo Tensei was able to summon countless powerful ninjas who had already passed away. The improved Edo Tensei can exert the strength of the reincarnated person to a greater extent. The current Akatsuki, to be honest, is not afraid of the ninja coalition of the 5 great ninja villages. Fight! 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 Defeat the ninja coalition formed by the 5 great ninja villages. Pull the Hachibi and Nine Tails out of Column Force's body. Completely resurrect the Jubi. Let himself become the Jubi's Column Force and carry out the Eye of the Moon plan. Let himself see the smile of the girl he missed again. Let himself be able to return to the simple and pure life he has been away from for a long time. Rin, I miss you so much. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, and Obito slowly closed his eyes again. The tears in his eyes, and the sour feeling slowly appeared on the tip of his nose. Obito almost tried his best to suppress such feelings. When Uchiha Obito opened his eyes again, there was no trace of confusion and sadness in his eyes, only determination. All the confusion and sadness are temporary, because as long as he can really carry out the Eye of the Moon plan, then he can regain everything he wants. And if the Eye of the Moon plan fails, he will just die. In that case, it is better to put all the doubts and confusion in his heart behind him and fight with all his strength. Get ready, we will launch the attack in 3 days. Obito looked at the 100,000 White Zetsu standing in front of him, and then looked at Black Zetsu and Kabuto standing beside him and said slowly, although we already have a powerful force that can compete with the 5 great ninja villages, and even in terms of high-end combat power, we still have countless people who have passed away and are not afraid of death. But we can't take it lightly. What we want is not a big battle, but a real victory in the war. In order to win, no matter how dirty the means are, you two will spare no effort to use it. Chapter 555. Obito silently calculated the power in his hands. 100,000 White Zetsu with strength comparable to a Chunin, and dozens of dead people summoned by Juri's Edo Tensei. Needless to say, 100,000 White Zetsu is the power used to fight against a large number of ninjas from the 5 great ninja villages. The powerhouses summoned by the Edo Tensei are the most important. After all, in the world of ninjas, although the number advantage is very important, when an individual's strength has exceeded the limit, it's not impossible for a single person to directly affect a war. Where is Kisame? Suddenly, Obito asked Black Zetsu who was standing beside him. Kisame is also a strong person that Uchiha Obito personally pulled into the Akatsuki. That kind of aggressive thinking and empty heart is the easiest sharp knife for Obito to control. And the fact is indeed so. Kisame has indeed done a good job over the years. The tasks given by him are basically completed very seriously. Even Itachi Uchiha, a bomb that can go out of control at any time, is monitored by Kisame, which is not bad. After hearing Obito's question, Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Uchiha Obito, immediately turned around and said to Obito, Kisame committed suicide because he failed the mission. Mission failed? Suicide? After hearing Black Zetsu's report, Obito's eyes were suddenly filled with a bit of astonishment. Kisame is not the kind of boring ninja with a fragile heart who can't accept his failure. On the contrary, because of Kisame's relatively strong nerves, his mental toughness is even stronger than most ninjas. Suddenly hearing these two words that had almost nothing to do with Kisame, Obito's brows, which were hidden under the mask, slowly knitted into a frown. Previously, we have been monitoring the people of Woodleaf Village and Cloud Village. By chance, we found that Uzumaki Naruto, who is the Nine Tails Column Force, and Killer Bee, who is the Hachibi Column Force, suddenly disappeared in their village. Because our main goal of this war is to capture the Hachibi and Nine Tails, I directly sent a part of White Zetsu to search and analyze the last place where the Nine Tails Column Force and the Hachibi Column Force appeared. Black Zetsu looked at Obito, and without the slightest concealment, he directly told all his arrangements to Obito. Under the effect of White Zetsu's detection ability, we quickly found that the Nine Tails Column Force of Woodleaf Village, Uzumaki Naruto, and the Hachibi Column Force of Cloud Village, Killer Bee, were in contact with each other, and they seemed to be rushing in a certain direction. In order to avoid any trouble, under my instructions, White Zetsu summoned the closest member of our Akatsuki organization to the location, that is, Kisame. Although Black Zetsu seemed to be unexpectedly honest at the moment, Obito's heart involuntarily began to have a kind of vigilance against Black Zetsu. Did his bewitchment these days not play its proper role? Black Zetsu's current behavior doesn't seem to be completely obedient to him. On the contrary, it's more like he wants to eliminate the power that he can control. Once suspicion began to appear in his heart, Obito's heart became sensitive. Such a war seems to rely too much on Black Zetsu's help and the 100,000 White Zetsu army, such a force that can't be ignored, is firmly in the hands of Black Zetsu. And after Black Zetsu stole the Rinnegan from Woodleaf Village, he just used a reason to fool Obito, saying that he didn't find the second Rinnegan. For such a reason, although Obito didn't say anything, but obviously he didn't believe him. Obito thought that he could make Black Zetsu submit, and all kinds of performance during this time also made Obito feel that Black Zetsu had slowly fallen into his control. But at this moment, he didn't know why, but Obito felt that Black Zetsu's heart not only didn't become clear to him, but also became more vague as if it was shrouded in smoke. After a battle, Kisame was seriously injured because he couldn't defeat the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, and the 4th Reikage AI, who came later to support him, and for some reason, he directly used the shark muscle to commit suicide. The shark muscle itself has the characteristics of killing its master, so it directly swallowed Kisame, who had lost his life. And the shark muscle also became the trophy of the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, who carried it with him. That's all the information I can get. After hearing that Kisame committed suicide and was swallowed by the shark muscle, Obito's frown loosened. The relationship between the shark muscle and the ghost shark couldn't be explained in a few words. Although it seemed that the ghost shark had indeed lost its life and even its body, it wouldn't end so easily. Translator, Law Editor, Hitesh _ although the ghost shark had indeed lost its life and even its body, it wouldn't end so easily. So that's how it is. After listening to Black Zetsu's words, Obito also slowly nodded and said a few understated words, as if he didn't care about the death of Kisame. However, the fact that Yondaime Reikage and Hachibi Jinchuriki were able to work together to kill Kisame is still worthy of our vigilance. The shinobi allied forces formed by the 5 great shinobi villages are not easy to deal with. We also need to have more capital in the limited time to defeat them. Black Zetsu looked at Obito, and his eyes became obscure, making people unable to figure out what he was thinking in his heart. Baguette, who was standing at the side, slowly walked a few steps towards the huge stone chair that Obito was sitting on, as if he wanted to show off his skills. Baguette said to Obito with a look of confidence, "Let's see if there's anything you can do. You don't have to worry. I have already made arrangements to enhance our strength." With that said, Kabuto's hand also began to make hand seals. Summoning Jutsu, Kabuto pressed his hand on the ground, and a summoning circle was completed in an instant. A relatively huge python revealed its figure from the smoke. This snake looks far larger than normal, but strangely, there is a strange bulge in the belly of this snake. Under the control of Medicine Master's pocket, this huge snake opened its mouth and spat out the obviously oversized object in its body as if it was vomiting. Soon, a white giant egg stained with mucus that seems to have a somewhat wooden feeling appeared in front of them. Although he couldn't immediately figure out what this white wooden egg was, a familiar aura was emitted from it. The ones who perceive it most clearly are Uchiha, Obito, and Black Zetsu. A part of their body was cultivated with the cells of the wood leaf first Hokage Senju Takuma, so the aura of this white egg is very familiar to them, because this white egg exudes the aura of the legendary god of shinobi Senju Takuma. Chapter 556. In fact, there are only a few things in the ninja world that can be related to Senju Takuma's aura, such as the 100,000 White Zetsu army cloned from Senju Takuma's genes. Black Zetsu shared the same body with White Zetsu, Uchiha Obito, whose body was filled with Hashirama's clone cells, Yamato, who was born from Orochimaru's research, and Shimura Danzo, who was already dead. No matter how he thought about it, the main body of the wooden egg was still as clear as day. Yamato. Black Zetsu looked at the huge wooden egg and murmured slightly. Kabuto, of course, also heard Black Zetsu's murmur, and with a little pride, he said to Obito and Black Zetsu, "There are actually many ways to make the power in our hands stronger. For example, we can search for the DNA of more deceased people to carry out the Edo Tensei. We can also use various experimental methods to allow the experts who are reincarnated from the Edo Tensei to display more of their strength when they were alive. But the simplest and fastest way is naturally to strengthen the 100,000 White Zetsu army." Kabuto adjusted the round-rimmed glasses on his nose and said to Obito and Black Zetsu, "The White Zetsu army was originally created with Senju Takuma's cells and the power of the Gedo Mazo, but the cells used to create the White Zetsu have also declined due to time, so the power of the various Mokuton ninjutsu used by the White Zetsu isn't that great." After saying that, Kabuto slowly walked to the side of the wooden egg. Regardless of the sticky body fluid attached to the wooden egg, Kabuto looked at it as if he was admiring a beautiful work of art, and there was a look of obsession in his eyes. But Yamato is different. He withstood the erosion of Senju Takuma's cells, and he really absorbed the Senju Takuma's cells in his body without any rejection. Although there was no way to exert the power of Mokuton to the extreme, it has to be said that the Senju Takuma cells in his body were actually activated to a certain extent. If we can extract the Senju Takuma cells from his body and use the Gedo Golem to modify the White Zetsu army, we will have a huge increase in power. The army of 100,000 White Zetsu originally had the strength of a Chunin. After such strengthening and transformation, although there may be individual differences, most of them will obtain the strength of a Chunin. If we have 100,000, no, even if we only have 50,000 or even 40,000 elite Chunin-level army, the ninja allied forces formed by the 5 great ninja villages will definitely be at an extremely obvious disadvantage in terms of basic strength. Hearing Medicine Master Bag's words, whether it was the expressionless Black Zetsu or Uchiha Obito, both of them were slightly moved. Although the two of them didn't know exactly how Medicine Master's pocket was going to change the 100,000 White Zetsu army, Medicine Master's pocket's description made it seem feasible. "Then I'll leave everything to you." Taking a deep look at Medicine Master Bag, Uchiha Obito said slowly. Black Zetsu, who was standing beside Obito, also slowly walked to the side of the wooden egg and pressed his hand on it. A very pure Mokutan chakra was slowly transmitted from Black Zetsu's body to the wooden egg, and the wooden egg began to move a little under the stimulation of Mokutan chakra. This wooden egg was originally Yamato's ultimate means to protect himself, but in the end, it was still something made by using Mokutan chakra. At this moment, Black Zetsu used Mokutan chakra, which is almost the same as Yamato's, to forcibly invade the wooden egg and seize control of Yamato, who had lost his consciousness and was hiding in the wooden egg. As Black Zetsu's chakra continued to increase, the wooden egg, which was a little bit pale, became lively at this moment. The white wooden egg began to slowly be stained with a bit of green luster, and even a few tender green sprouts sprang out in some places. Finally, when Black Zetsu's chakra infusion reached a limit, the wooden egg that had been wrapped around Yamato's body finally couldn't withstand the huge power coming from inside. Like a ripe capsule, it directly burst open, and vines spread directly from the center of the wooden egg. In the center of the spreading vines, Yamato, who had lost consciousness but had no obvious injuries on his body, was lying in the center of the vines. Black Zetsu's powerful Mokutan power directly made Uchiha Obito sitting on the stone chair and medicine master bag slightly surprised. Black Zetsu was really hiding something, but Black Zetsu didn't seem to feel that what he just did was strange. He directly grabbed Yamato's arm and dragged the unconscious Yamato in the direction of medicine master bag. "I'll leave it to you." Looking at medicine master bag, Black Zetsu directly threw Yamato in the direction of medicine master bag. Looking at Yamato, who was flying towards him, a huge white snake suddenly came out from medicine master pocket's loose robe. The huge white snake opened its mouth and directly caught Yamato, who was flying towards him, in its mouth. The white snake didn't reveal its poisonous fangs, so Yamato didn't receive any injury. At this moment, medicine master bag forcibly hid the indignation in his heart. After all, for the sensitive medicine master bag, Black Zetsu's action was simply telling him that he was powerless against this wooden egg. Although this was a fact, but medicine master bag still didn't want to be humiliated like this. "I don't need you to say more." Looking at Black Zetsu, medicine master bag coldly said. Obviously it was such a short conversation, but it was really full of gunpowder smell. And as the nominal leader of Akatsuki organization, Uchiha Obito coldly looked at medicine master bag and Black Zetsu, who were at daggers drawn, and the atmosphere was tense. Persuade? Uchiha Obito didn't think about such a thing at all. What Uchiha Obito wanted was not how harmonious the organization was. What Obito wanted was to have enough power to compete with the joint forces of the 5 great shinobi villages. Now he, Black Zetsu, and Medicine Master Bag have a common enemy. And his biggest goal now is to defeat the 5 great shinobi villages as a common enemy. Once the 5 great shinobi villages are defeated, the Eye of the Moon plan will be implemented. At that time, everything will be under Uchiha Obito's control. Dealing with this small disharmony is simply a simple matter. Chapter 557. With the fermentation of time and the news of the war spread like wildfire, the entire ninja world seemed to be shrouded in a layer of haze. The ninja world has experienced too much pain because of the war. When the news of the war began to spread, almost everyone living in the ninja world began to become nervous. Everyone in the ninja world was like a frightened animal, doing everything possible to prevent themselves from being hurt by the upcoming war. But for those who are at the top of the power, who can benefit from the war is the grandest carnival. In the daimyo house of the Land of Fire, the daimyo of the Land of Fire didn't seem to be worried at the moment. Instead, his eyes were very excited. The Land of Fire is the strongest village in the ninja world, Woodleaf Ninja Village. In the First Shinobi World War, Second Shinobi World War, and the Third Shinobi World War not long ago, although Woodleaf itself also suffered a certain degree of loss, but there is no doubt that every time they stood in the middle of the battlefield as the winner. It is precisely because of the victory of Woodleaf again and again that the daimyo of the Land of Fire have a kind of almost blind faith in Woodleaf. Looking at some of the predictions about the war and the temporary plan of Woodleaf submitted by the 4th Hokage Wave Kaze Watergate, the daimyo of the Land of Fire showed a bit of a greedy smile at the moment. The 5 great ninja villages are attacking the Akatsuki of the Land of Rain. What a grand event this is! Slowly picking up a wide-mouthed wine cup beside him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire showed a touch of fanaticism in his eyes. Expand the territory? Expand the territory! As the supreme leader of a country, in addition to letting the country pass on smoothly in his own hands, what else is worth being so excited about? Naturally, it is to make the country stronger in his own hands. The strength of a country is reflected in many aspects, but the most obvious and the most significant is the expansion of the territory. The daimyo of the Land of Fire has begun to slowly realize the aging of his body, and the time he can stay in this world to enjoy the glory and wealth is not much. But when he looked back at the past few decades, even though he had achieved quite a lot of political achievements, he still felt that it wasn't enough for the Fire Nation. And now, an opportunity that was hard to come by was placed right in front of the Fire Country's eyes. This time, the Rain Country could be said to have angered everyone. In the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, there is no possibility of failure in this war. When the 5 great shinobi villages won the war, the daimyo of the Land of Fire decided to gather the daimyo of several other countries and directly use their power to erase the Land of Rain from the map of the shinobi world. At that time, the 5 major countries would jointly divide the country of Rain, although the territory of the country of Rain wasn't that big. However, if the Fire Nation could get a share of this land, it would be considered as an unparalleled achievement in expanding their territory. Just as the great name of the Fire Nation was immersed in leaving his name in the annals of history for future generations to look up to, a burst of noise suddenly sounded from outside the palace where the great name of the Fire Nation was. Assassin! Assassin! Guards, an assassin has broken into the palace. Catch him! Don't let him get away! Kill! 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 The harsh shouting directly broke the silence of the night, and also broke the delusion of the daimyo of the Land of Fire about the victory of the war. People are always afraid of death, and for the daimyo of the Land of Fire who is in a high position and lives in luxury, his life is naturally more precious. After hearing the harsh shouting outside, a chill spread from the heart directly swept the whole body of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. In the previous wars, no matter how anxious the war situation was, each shinobi village maintained a certain restraint between each other. That is, they tried to put the battlefield in an area that is difficult for civilians to get close to, and didn't attack the political system of the country. So subconsciously, the daimyo of the Land of Fire didn't think that he would be attacked. He just thought that the worst situation is that Leaf will lose and pay a certain amount of compensation. But now, as the enemy of the Land of Fire, Amigakure has obviously given up such a bottom line, and began to directly and blatantly attack the political leader of the Land of Fire, the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Fear swept the heart of the daimyo of the Land of Fire in an instant. The daimyo now wants to open the door of his room and let all his guards come to his side to protect his safety. But the reason in the daimyo's heart is constantly reminding him that he must not expose his position at will. The daimyo of the Land of Fire has experienced a lot of things, but most of his experiences are political games. This kind of killing without spilling blood is the most familiar thing to the daimyo of the Land of Fire. But now, the way the daimyo of the Land of Fire is completely unacceptable to the daimyo of the Land of Fire. A thin layer of sweat has been attached to the daimyo's forehead because of fear and tension. In order to prevent himself from screaming, the daimyo of the Land of Fire even covered his mouth with his hand. The originally elegant and lazy sitting posture had disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the daimyo of the Fire Nation directly fell to the ground. His body was slightly curled up. Obviously, he wanted to use this method to give himself some sense of security. Finally, after suffering from the fear in his heart for a long time, the shouting outside his room gradually subsided. The daimyo of the Land of Fire's ears are very keen to catch the footsteps in the corridor outside his room. This kind of footsteps can only be made by people who are used to the palace for a long time. The daimyo of the Land of Fire knew that the guards or servants of the palace came, so he quickly sat up from the posture of falling on the ground, tidying up his clothes and hair. There is no trace of the frightened appearance just now. Just after the daimyo of the Land of Fire tidied up, the door of the daimyo's room was gently knocked. The daimyo slightly cleared his throat and said to the door with a rather solemn and noble voice, "Come in." Hearing the voice of the daimyo, the door of the room was slowly pushed open. Two blood-soaked guards and a group of servants from the palace walked into the room and knelt on the ground. Their armors were slightly damaged and they were covered in blood. Chapter 558. This humble servant greets your majesty. This humble servant greets your majesty. A group of guards and servants kowtowing in front of the daimyo of the Land of Fire shouted together to the daimyo of the Land of Fire. But after hearing such a shout, the daimyo of the Land of Fire looked very indifferent, as if the person who was scared out of his wits before wasn't him. In an understatement, the daimyo of the Land of Fire said to the guards and servants who were kowtowing in front of him, "Get up!" Hearing the words of the daimyo, the two guards who had been kowtowing in front of the daimyo with slightly damaged armor stood up from their kowtowing posture. As for the other servants with lower statuses, they maintained their kneeling posture and retreated to both sides of the room. Reporting to your majesty, just now this humble servant discovered an unknown ninja who forced his way into your majesty's bedroom. After the verbal warning didn't work, this humble servant immediately led the guards of the Land of Fire to stop this ninja. After a battle, this assassin was finally killed. I hope your majesty won't be frightened by this humble servant's failure of duty. These two people wearing armor are not ordinary soldiers. They have the ability to fight ninjas, but they are not strong people who came out of the ninja village. The daimyo of the Land of Fire is reluctant to regard them as lowly servants. Even if these two guards seem to be asking for punishment, the daimyo will never blame them. Instead, he will go up and constantly appease them. Sure enough, the daimyo of the Land of Fire slowly stood up from where he was originally sitting. He walked to the front of the two guards and said to them with a kind smile, "Sir, I'm here to help you. The two of you don't have to be like this. Encountering such a thing is unexpected. Fortunately, with the joint efforts of the two of you, in the future, the enemy will be killed. This is already a very good record. How can I pick bones in an egg and criticize the two of you?" The words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire fell into the ears of the two guards. Naturally, they were very happy. Looking at the expression on the faces of the two guards, the daimyo knew that he has successfully won a wave of people's hearts. He reached into his bosom and took out a high-grade silk handkerchief. Then, he slowly pressed the handkerchief in his hand onto the blood-stained armor. It seemed like he was wiping the armor for the two guards. As people with a certain level of skill, the two guards naturally noticed the movement of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Before the daimyo of the Land of Fire really wiped his armor, the two guards immediately knelt on the ground and said to the daimyo of the Land of Fire, "Your Majesty, the two of us was lucky enough to be favored by your Majesty, and we were able to work in your Majesty's palace. With a high salary, we can enjoy a luxurious life. This kind of life is the daimyo of the Land of the Land of the Land of the Land of Fire. To be able to receive such treatment from your Majesty, we are already in fear and trepidation. How can we let your Majesty personally wipe our armor for us, and let your precious body be tainted?" After listening to the words of the two guards, the daimyo still squatted down by himself. He took the white, exquisitely embroidered handkerchief in his hand and began to wipe the two guards who were half kneeling in front of him. After wiping a few times, the originally white handkerchief was already stained with blood. When they saw the highest leader of the Land of the Fire personally wipe their armor, the feelings of gratitude directly filled the hearts of the two guards. There was a faint feeling of tears in their eyes. Feeling that he had done enough, the daimyo pinched his handkerchief in his hand and slowly stood up from his squatting position. He then said to the two guards half kneeling in front of him, "Don't worry, I'm sorry. This daimyo is just a scholar without the strength to truss a chicken. Because of the promising ancestors, I have the opportunity to inherit the position of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Since the succession, this daimyo has been questioning myself. How can I become the daimyo of such a great country? In terms of thesis, there are countless civil officials in the Land of Fire who are better than me. In terms of martial arts, I can't even wield a long sword a few times. How can such a person be a qualified daimyo?" After thinking carefully, I finally came to a conclusion. The daimyo of the Land of Fire slowly paced in front of the two half-kneeling guards in front of him. His face was full of worry for the people of the Land of Fire. Although I am not proficient in literature and martial arts, but after careful consideration, I found that I can still do something. I am not proficient in literature, but I can let every scholar in the Land of Fire be able to use their pen and ink to their heart's content. I am not proficient in martial arts, but I can let all the martial artists in the Land of Fire be able to get the respect they deserve. With that, the daimyo looked at the two guards half kneeling in front of him. Both of you are the best among the many martial artists in the Land of Fire. Even without the same environment as the ninja village, you can still cultivate to such a level. Can't be said that you are talented. More importantly, you're still willing to serve under me. You fought to guard me, you were injured to protect me. How can I stand by and watch you coldly because of such a dirty thing? The daimyo's words were full of emotion, and even his eyes were filled with tears. The daimyo of the Land of Fire has become like this, not to mention the two lowborn martial artists who are half kneeling in front of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. At this moment, the two guards kneeling in front of the daimyo have tears in their eyes. They have all knelt in front of the daimyo of the Land of Fire and shouted loudly, "We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for your majesty." Hearing the voices of the two guards, the daimyo immediately helped the two guards who were half kneeling on the ground up with a face full of excitement. After encouraging the two guards with a few more words and promising some rewards, the two guards walked out of the room with faces full of gratitude. Seeing the two guards have walked away, the daimyo raised his hand and looked at the white handkerchief in his hand that has been stained with blood. His brows slightly wrinkled, as if throwing away a very disgusting garbage. He threw the handkerchief in his hand to the side. Glancing at the person kneeling on the ground who was obviously the leader of the slaves, the daimyo coldly asked, "Have you found out the identity of that assassin?" The slave who was kneeling on the side slowly stood up, then whispered a few words in the ear of the daimyo. In the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, a trace of anger emerged in the blink of an eye. Akatsuki Organization. Chapter 559. In the tense period of preparation for the war, an uninvited guest came to Woodleaf Village. The status of this uninvited guest seems to be very high. Even the leader of Woodleaf Village, Yandame Watergate, the fourth Hokage, personally came to greet him with a hat that represents his identity as the Hokage. Looking at the palanquin, which was deliberately reduced in decorations, but still looked expensive, carried slowly by 16 strong men, Watergate's expression hidden under the hat became very serious. Today, in order to meet such a character, Watergate brought almost all the high-end combat forces that can be transferred here. Watergate is very clear. Anyone can face the risk, but only this person must not have the slightest accident. Finally, under the support of 16 strong men, the luxurious palanquin came to Watergate. As the leader of Woodleaf Village, Watergate went directly to the palanquin and personally opened the curtain in front of the palanquin for the person sitting in it. The curtain in front of the palanquin was slowly opened, and the person sitting in it also revealed his face. Slightly unhealthy white skin, slightly old appearance. This person is the real ruler of the Land of Fire, daimyo of the Land of Fire. Although nominally the status of the Land of Fire and the Hokage of Woodleaf Village is the same, after all, Woodleaf Village is rooted in the Land of Fire, and in theory it is under the rule of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Before, Woodleaf Village suffered great damage because of the invasion of the 6 Paths of Pain, and it was also with the help of the daimyo of the Land of Fire that they were able to recover from the damage so quickly. So at this moment, although Watergate's behavior of personally opening the curtain for the daimyo of the Land of Fire seems a bit undignified, but it is not incomprehensible. If it was normal times, seeing Watergate so humble, the daimyo of the Land of Fire will certainly not let go of such an opportunity to show his charm as a leader. But at this moment, the expression of the daimyo of the Land of Fire is very unnatural. Watergate is very keen to capture a trace of unconcealable fear from the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Was the information that he had received all this time true? That's right, as the military force of the Fire Nation, Watergate naturally heard about the invasion of foreign enemies. However, due to the Fire Nation's identity, Woodleaf Village couldn't put such a high-ranking person on their monitoring list. Therefore, the information obtained by Watergate was actually incomplete. He only knew that Akatsuki seemed to have broken their long-standing practice and began to attack some people in the political system without military force. Fourth Hokage. Daimyo came out from his palanquin and deeply looked at Bo-Fong Watergate. And when he determined that the person standing in front of him was the one who had created countless brilliant achievements and had personally defeated the former leader of Akatsuki organization, Six Paths Pain, his expression finally relaxed a little. Your Majesty. Watergate took a few steps back, bowed respectfully to the daimyo of the Country of Fire, then stepped forward and said, I have also heard about the things that happened in the past few days. Now, all the people present are the elites of our Woodleaf village, so daimyo doesn't have to worry about your own safety. Please come with me, and after we reach a safe place, we will discuss how to solve the recent problems. Daimyo of the Fire Nation heard Watergate's words and looked around at the ninjas standing around him. Most of these ninjas are people who have made a name for themselves in the ninja world, and Daimyo of the Fire Nation also knows many familiar faces and even people who have names and nicknames. Although Daimyo of the Fire Nation has always had a certain amount of trust in his guards, but during this period of time, he has been attacked more than once. Although such attacks were resisted by his guards again and again, but at the same time, it also made Daimyo of the Fire Nation a little uneasy about the ability of his guards. Now that he can see so many strong people of the shinobi world standing beside him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire also slowly relaxed from his originally hanging posture. Fourth Hokage, please lead the way. I'm really tired these days. Even if daimyo didn't say it, Watergate can very keenly judge from his face and expression. At this moment, daimyo obviously hasn't slept well for a long time. Watergate can roughly judge the level of daimyo of the Fire Nation's guards. If an ordinary jonin encounters such a team of guards, Minato can guarantee that he will lose without a doubt. After all, this is a team that the daimyo of the Land of Fire used their huge wealth to create. Their armor and weapons were even custom-made at a high price from the Land of Iron, the only remaining samurai in the shinobi world. But after going through the attacks of Akatsuki organization, more than half of the members of this group of guards were actually reduced. It seems that Akatsuki organization really didn't just launch a tentative attack on daimyo of the Fire Nation, but they really want to put daimyo of the Fire Nation to death. But Watergate knows that such a place is not suitable to talk about such things. So, forcibly suppressing the confusion in his heart, Watergate very respectfully led daimyo of the Fire Nation to the place he had prepared to rest. Not long after, Watergate took daimyo of the Fire Nation to a place that looks very luxuriously decorated. Here was originally the property of a very famous businessman in the Woodleaf village, but not long ago, after an investigation by Umbu, they suddenly found that this businessman seems to have an unclear relationship with Akatsuki organization, so this businessman was directly taken away by Umbu, and this magnificent property was directly left behind. But at this moment, daimyo of the Fire Nation didn't have the time to check how exquisite the garden in this property is, and how colorful the dugong is. After daimyo of the Fire Nation arrived inside the house, he immediately fell on the sofa, and the fatigue of his whole body seemed to have reached the peak at this moment. Looking at the sleepy face of daimyo of the Fire Nation, Watergate tentatively said to daimyo of the Fire Nation, Your Majesty is tired from the long journey, you might as well take a rest first. Anyway, you can fully trust that we can guarantee your safety here. At least 3 jonin will be around your room to protect you, and we will also arrange a certain number of umbu to investigate your surrounding environment at all times. Hearing Watergate's words, daimyo of the Fire Nation finally nodded tiredly after thinking for a while, and with the help of his servant, he walked towards the bedroom of this house. Chapter 560. When the daimyo of the Land of Fire fell on the bed, he fell into a deep sleep almost instantly. After seeing that the daimyo had fallen asleep, the servants also retreated from the room one by one and stood outside the door, slowly waiting for their master to call them. At the moment, Watergate was already standing with the guard leader of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Watergate made a gesture to invite the guard leader to sit beside him. Originally, the guard leader's heart was still a little nervous. After all, in terms of status, Watergate, the 4th Hokage, is at the same level as the daimyo. For most people, Minato was a living legend, and such a legend suddenly invited him, who was only a little famous, to sit with him. The guard leader was so excited that words couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. But in the face of Minato's amiable smile, the nervousness in the guard leader's heart slowly subsided. The guard leader plucked up his courage and sat opposite to Watergate, then said to Watergate cautiously, "Hokage-sama, do you have any orders?" Hearing the rather nervous words of the guard leader, Minato smiled amiably at the guard leader and said, "That's right. It's nothing, you don't have to be nervous. To put it bluntly, you and I are actually both warriors, it's just that the direction of our development is not the same. But as a warrior, that kind of straightforward heart is the same. The reason why I called you over is not to question or criticize you, but simply to ask your daimyo what he experienced. What did you guys go through?" Watergate's words were very sincere. He didn't mean to put on airs at all. The guard leader sitting opposite to Watergate was very comfortable listening to him. Under the deliberate guidance of Watergate, his thoughts gradually immersed in the almost endless attacks he experienced in the past period of time. The guard leader slowly spoke to Watergate about the battles he experienced as the leader of the daimyo's guards. But the more he listened, the more Watergate felt the matter was strange. As a ninja, Watergate was very clear that if a ninja really wants to kill or capture his mission target, he will stop at nothing. Hiding his true identity, sneaking in, drugging, assassination are all common things for a ninja. But listening to the description of the guard leader, it seems that all the members of Akatsuki organization who have been attacking the daimyo of the Land of Fire during this period of time, almost all of them directly fought with the guards. And it seems after the battle, the attackers from Akatsuki organization even directly wore the Akatsuki organization's trademark black uniform with red clouds. They didn't pursue killing a few people, only pursuing how bloody and terrible the scene was. Such a method of action was truly strange to the extreme. And the strangest thing is, except for the first time we defeated the enemy and left the enemy's head, every time after we killed the enemy's body was very strange and directly integrated into the soil and disappeared. Originally, Watergate was just quietly listening to the guard leader retelling the events that happened during this period of time, but suddenly Watergate heard such a sentence. Watergate immediately ended his long silence and said to the guard leader, "Wait, you mean you left the enemy's head? Can you let me take a look?" Hearing Watergate's words, although the guard leader was a little confused, he nodded and said to Watergate, "Of course, I will bring you the enemy's head that we have kept. To be honest, this person's appearance is really strange, although I have seen a lot of strange things, but the appearance of this enemy is really strange." After that, the guard leader walked towards the place where the guards were stationed outside. After a while, the guard leader came in with a box. Putting the enemy's head in the box in front of Watergate, the guard leader opened the box for Watergate. Watergate looked at the wooden box, and the enemy's face appeared in front of Watergate. Watergate had a very systematic understanding of the composition of the members of Akatsuki organization, so he naturally knew this person with a strange face, because this person's appearance was exactly the same as the half-black half-white Zetsu in the information. The only difference was that this Zetsu's whole face was white, without any black part. Zetsu? Hearing Watergate suddenly call out such a name, the guard leader was a little surprised. "Hokage-sama, do you know this person?" Watergate nodded, then said to the guard leader, "Indeed, this person was actually mentioned in the information collected by Woodleaf. However, it doesn't match the physical characteristics in our data. I'm not sure what's going on now. I don't know if I can take this head temporarily and give it to the people of our ninja village to study." Hearing Watergate's inquiry, in fact, the guard leader wanted to directly agree. But after all, such a thing involves the daimyo of the Land of Fire, so the guard leader couldn't immediately respond to Watergate's inquiry at the moment. Obviously, Watergate also saw the entanglement in the guard leader's heart at the moment, and quickly reacted and said to the guard leader, "Of course, this is not a matter of a short time. It's not too late to talk about these things after His Majesty has rested." Hearing Watergate's words, the guard leader's face, which was originally very entangled, became slightly better. "I still have a lot of things to deal with. Please protect His Majesty. After His Majesty has rested, inform me to come and discuss with His Majesty." Watergate looked at the guard leader and said to him, and the guard leader also understood and respectfully saluted Watergate. That's natural, please rest assured Hokage-sama. Looking at the guard leader, Watergate smiled and directly walked out of this exquisite courtyard specially prepared for the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Watergate didn't rush to his office. Instead, he slowly walked on the street of Woodleaf and began to think about the Akatsuki's current behavior. In fact, not only the Land of Fire's daimyo, several other villages also sent their country's daimyo to Woodleaf, and the Akatsuki was very deliberately, almost provocatively attacked them. What's the benefit of such behavior? Watergate couldn't understand it for a while, because this will only make the countries more united against a common enemy, and the Akatsuki didn't seem to have the slightest benefit. Chapter 561. Yandame-sama, I'm really sorry that we have to meet for such a reason. When I first came to Woodleaf because I was too tired, I had to ask you to forgive me for resting for so many days. The Land of Fire daimyo sat in his seat and looked at Watergate, who was sitting opposite him with a slightly apologetic look. In fact, the Land of Fire daimyo's heart was also a little nervous. After all, when he recalled his attitude when he first came to Woodleaf, he felt that if someone treated him like that, he would have a grudge in his heart. After all, it wasn't Watergate's fault that he was attacked, but when he came to Woodleaf to seek protection from Watergate, Watergate also directly greeted him with a large group of powerful ninjas, and in a hurry, he also prepared a courtyard that was worthy of his identity as a place to rest. Watergate has done a good job, but his attitude toward Watergate is indeed a little too arrogant. As the leader of the most powerful military organization in the country, Watergate's status is the same as his, and he doesn't have to cater to his responsibilities. In order to relieve the anxiety in his heart, and also to let Minato do his best to protect him in the future, the daimyo of the Fire Country actually lowered himself very much. This could be heard from the daimyo's words just now. Watergate has been a Hokage for so many years, so he is naturally very clear about these psychological changes. Although the Land of Fire daimyo at this moment is very humble, but that's just because the Land of Fire daimyo succumbed to the fear in his heart. It's not something that can be relied on. Watergate also very humbly said to the Land of Fire daimyo, "Your Majesty doesn't have to worry about it. This is human nature. As the Land of Fire daimyo, you naturally don't often encounter such frightening things. And your experience from your palace all the way to Woodleaf Village, I also know a little about it from your guard leader. Woodleaf Village is also a part of the Land of Fire. As a member of the many people of the Land of Fire, naturally we have to step forward for the sake of the Land of Fire. Protecting the Land of Fire daimyo is also the responsibility and obligation of our Woodleaf Village." The Land of Fire daimyo quietly listened to Watergate's words, although Watergate's words are quite political, but as the head of the political system of the Land of Fire, this way of speaking is the most acceptable to the daimyo. The daimyo's face showed a somewhat gratified smile. Apparently, he understood the meaning of Watergate's words. The daimyo didn't continue this topic with Watergate, because just now Watergate's words was actually a promise to himself. Protecting his safety is Watergate's task. As two smart people, in fact, they don't need to speak so clearly between each other. A little bit of pointers is enough for them to understand each other. Hokage-sama, I have read the battle plan you submitted to me before more than once or twice during this time, although I dare not say that I fully understand what kind of position Hokage-sama is going to put Woodleaf Village in the Shinobi World War, and what kind of benefits you want the Land of Fire to obtain from it. But I think I have already found 3 of them. All the plans are very good, rigorous, and operable. But I still feel that it's a little insufficient. In the Shinobi world, the military and political affairs of a country are actually separated. The daimyo is responsible for government affairs, and the village leader is responsible for military affairs. Under normal circumstances, unless there was a request from one of the parties, there would be no overstepping their boundaries. But at this moment, the daimyo of the Land of Fire obviously broke such a rule, and began to express his opinion on the military planning of Woodleaf Village. Hearing the daimyo's words, Watergate's eyes also vaguely showed a bit of interest. Although Watergate tried to hide the interest in his eyes, the daimyo of the Land of Fire still caught the slightly disrespectful interest in Watergate's eyes from Watergate's eyes and expression. If other people dared to do such a disrespectful behavior to him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire will definitely flip the table and leave on the spot, and if this person's status is not high enough, he may directly kill this guy. But at this moment, the person sitting opposite him, to put it nicely, is the person he is asking for protection. And to put it bluntly, if this person really has any disloyalty, with a little effort, he can directly change the position of the daimyo. This is the shinobi world, this is a big country. Even if your status is high, once a powerful person wants to make a move on you, they can find enough loopholes to deal with you. Resisting the discomfort in his heart, the daimyo then said to Watergate, "In this plan, in the last appendix, the benefits that can be obtained after the victory of the war are mentioned. Some of them are naturally very exciting, such as the long-term peace of the shinobi world, and the equal trade between the 5 major countries. But I still feel that there is something missing, and that is the punishment for the Rain country. I don't want our shinobi to fight a hard battle, and shed their blood for something that sounds good but is very empty. You don't want the shinobi to get nothing? You don't want yourself, you don't want your country to get nothing, right?" Looking at the impassioned words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, he directly put himself in the position of all shinobi. But at this moment, the greed in the eyes of the daimyo of the Land of Fire was so obvious, so undisguised. Of course, the daimyo is looking forward to victory, of course, he is looking forward to the Land of Fire being the leader of the 5 major countries. But now, what the daimyo needs more is a vigorous battle, a good enough result, and a great achievement that is enough to leave his name in history. With excitement in his eyes, the daimyo clenched his fists and looked at Watergate with eagerness. In fact, such post-war negotiations have never been the responsibility of the ninja village as an armed organization, but the Land of Fire sent its own political talents and negotiators to reach this agreement. But due to the dual system of the country, the daimyo of the Land of Fire had to ask for the opinion of Watergate. And Watergate, as the supreme leader of the country's armed forces, is naturally the gardener who personally cultivated such an extraordinary result. The Land of Rain? Obviously, in the words of the daimyo of the Land of Fire just now, he emphasized the 3 words of the Land of Rain. Watergate can feel the almost fanatical pursuit in the eyes of the daimyo when he said these 3 words. Of course, the sharp-minded Watergate also understood the mind of the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Is it really the temptation that every person in a high position can't resist? Chapter 562. In the Akatsuki's base, Black Zetsu was standing in front of the huge Geto Mazo in a daze. He casually glanced at the thick vines extending from the Geto Mazo's body. On these vines, there was a slightly shriveled flower bud that was used to nurture White Zetsu's clone. Just as Black Zetsu was casually glancing at the flower bud, suddenly, the originally shriveled and yellow flower bud was no longer shriveled and yellow, and even the shriveled state began to slowly fill up. Under the slightly dim light, one could vaguely see the human figure inside. Seeing that the originally shriveled flower bud was filled up again, Black Zetsu slowly walked to the foot of the Geto Mazo and pressed his hand on the body of the Geto Mazo. Chakra was transmitted from Black Zetsu's body to the Geto Mazo, and the Geto Mazo directly transmitted the chakra to the Geto Mazo. After a while, under the unrestrained supply of chakra from Black Zetsu, the Geto Mazo directly became mature. The petals of the Geto Mazo opened, and a naked White Zetsu's clone jumped out of the Geto Mazo. As if he didn't feel anything strange about being naked, this White Zetsu directly walked to the front of Black Zetsu and directly knelt down. "Greetings, Jetsu-sama." Black Zetsu didn't know whether this White Zetsu's clone was paying respect to the main body of White Zetsu or Black Zetsu. Anyway, Black Zetsu looked at the half-kneeling White Zetsu's clone and said coldly, "What's the situation?" When the White Zetsu's clone heard Black Zetsu's question, he lowered his head even more because he wanted to appear more respectful. Reporting to Jetsu-sama, during this period of time, I and the other 4 White Zetsu's clone have been attacking the daimyo of the 5 major countries day and night. The daimyo of the Land of Fire that I am responsible for has reached the Wood Leaf village at this moment, and the other daimyo of several countries seem to be about to be unable to support the ninja villages of their countries. In order to ensure that their own country's Kage would not be attacked by us in the coming war, they would definitely gather all of them together. And because of our unconventional actions this time, the ninjas of the 5 major countries will definitely be excited, and in the following battle they will definitely be more united to buy time for us. Although White Zetsu's doppelganger had only said a few short sentences, it had revealed all of Black Zetsu's plans. Obviously, such continuous attacks on the daimyo of the 5 major countries were not arranged by Uchiha Obito, but by Black Zetsu's own decision. White Zu's clone was also very loyal to Black Zu. He obeyed Black Zu's orders. Just as Watergate thought before, the purpose of Black Zetsu doing this is to make the ninjas of the 5 major countries more united against a common enemy. After all, even if they look down on the daimyo of their country, once the daimyo of their country has an accident, it is no different from directly slapping the face of the ninjas of each country. No ninja would allow such a thing to happen. At this moment, what Black Zetsu was looking forward to was not the so-called victory at all. What Black Zetsu needed at this moment was the most abundant and most tense time. Black Zetsu glanced at White Zetsu's doppelganger, who was half kneeling in front of him, and slowly put his hand on the head of White Zetsu's doppelganger. Chakra continued to pour into the head of White Zetsu's doppelganger. White Zetsu's doppelganger, who was still quite intelligent at this moment, his eyes became dull almost in an instant. White Zetsu's doppelganger is just a consumable for Black Zetsu. The reason why he chose this doppelganger of White Zetsu's doppelganger to carry out his plan is only because this doppelganger has the strength of an elite jonin after being transformed by Kabuto Yakushi. Now that his task has been completed, he can no longer keep the consciousness that he has deliberately cultivated. Recently, Black Zetsu can clearly feel that because of some of his previous actions, whether intentional or unintentional, Uchiha Obito has become vigilant against him. At this moment, Kabuto, who wanted to prove his worth through all kinds of things, was staring at him like a mad dog. Although he wasn't afraid of Kabuto and Uchiha Obito joining hands, in such a critical period, it was better to have less trouble than more trouble. As for the remaining 4 White Zetsu's doppelganger, once they force all the daimyo of the 5 major countries to the ninja villages of his country, Black Zetsu will also make a move on them and erase all their intelligence. Anyway, in the army of 100,000 White Zetsu, only 5 White Zetsu's doppelganger are a little abnormal. It is not easy to attract attention. Black Zetsu's doppelganger, who was half kneeling in front of him, waved his hand gently, and with a slightly dull expression, directly merged into the soil under Black Zetsu's control to join the rest of the White Zetsu's army. Black Zetsu looked at the Geto Mazo standing in front of him, and his eyes slightly drifted. Mother-sama, soon you will be able to resurrect from a long sleep. Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara, they are just chess pieces in my hands. Black Zetsu's eyes were full of indifference and coldness at this moment. It seems that in order to achieve his goal, Black Zetsu can do anything. From the ancient times to the present, Black Zetsu has been like this step by step. He slowly turned from immaturity to maturity, and from maturity to wily and astute. Even now, such a war that swept the entire shinobi world is nothing more than a game of chess for Black Zetsu. People in the world think that they can control their own destiny. They are constantly fighting. Some people succeed and are regarded as heroes. Some people fail and are regarded as devils. But these so-called successes and failures all came from the secret manipulation of one person. This person is Black Zetsu. Wandering in the torrent of history, he became the powerful support behind every hero, and the whisper of every devil in the ears of every devil king. Pair of hands holding both black and white. All the creatures in the world are just playthings in his hands. And Black Zetsu has only one purpose, and that is to bring his mother back to this world. Chapter 563. Black Zetsu's secret plan was gradually completed with the passage of time. As the daimyo of the 5 major countries, no one was reckless. When the Kage of the 5 major ninja villages noticed that the Akatsuki had begun to move against the Kage of their country, they also came up with a plan together. That is, gather all the daimyo of the 5 major countries in a secret place, and then send elite ninjas to protect the political leaders of these 5 countries. After all, now is the edge of the outbreak of war. The combat power of every ninja village is precious. In order to protect the daimyo of their country, they must send one or even several ninjas who are strong enough to protect the daimyo, in addition to occupying a lot of ordinary ninja resources. In order to ensure the smooth progress of the war, the Kage of the 5 major ninja villages finally found a very secret place after a discussion, and sent an appropriate amount of ninjas to protect the daimyo of their country. After experiencing such a thing, almost every ninja in the shinobi village was quite excited. So although a part of the combat power was occupied for no reason, it was not a loss. Let's put all the actions of the 5 major countries and the internal actions of the Akatsuki aside. The 2 people who played an important role in this war, the Nine Tails Column Force, Uzumaki Naruto, and the Hachibi Column Force, Killer Bee, also came to a secret place in the Land of Lightning. This place is the place where the 4th Raikage AI said can let Naruto master the power of the 9 tails in his body. Yo, we came to this place, this is the place to get power. As long as you can complete the training, you can become super strong. Oh yeah. Killer Bee looked at the familiar scene in front of him and said to Naruto, who was standing next to him, in his own strange tone. Although Killer Bee's way of speaking was very strange, Naruto gradually began to adapt to Killer Bee's way of speaking after getting along with him along the way. After all, although Killer Bee looks very wild and unruly, in fact, he is a very easy person to get along with. How could Naruto reject such a person in his heart? Instead of talking to Killer Bee, Naruto turned his head and began to carefully observe the place where he could master the power of 9 tails. This place looked more like an altar with a long history. Many broken stone pillars and some broken sculptures were silently telling Killer Bee and Whirlpool Naruto about the long history of this place. There were also many places in the ruins that had some totems and murals that people couldn't understand. Naruto couldn't help but lift his feet and walk around the ruins. Finally, a relatively complete mural appeared in front of Naruto. The mural looked a little abstract, but for some reason, Naruto unexpectedly understood the meaning of the mural. It was a very tall and unusual figure. This figure was outlined with black paint, and in the hand of the figure was a circular staff. Around the figure were circles of light and shadow outlined with gold and white, making people feel that this person didn't seem to belong to this world. On the contrary, it was more like a feeling of transcendence. Of course, what attracted Naruto's attention the most was the black figure's eyes, which were painted with white and purple ripples at the same time. Naruto recognized this pair of eyes, because this pair of eyes was the eyes of the person who made Naruto face his weakness. Sage of the 6 Paths. Naruto's mouth couldn't help but murmur the name of this legendary figure. This pair of eyes were the eyes of the leader of Akatsuki, Pain, who destroyed almost the entire village of Konoha with his own strength, and brought the biggest disaster to Konoha since the establishment of the village, the legendary eyes of immortal Rinnegan. Naruto didn't know if it was his own illusion or something else, but he always felt that the eyes of the Sage of the 6 Paths in this mural were not as empty as in the painting. Instead, he felt like he was being stared at by this person. This feeling didn't make Naruto feel strange or uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was very peaceful, as if he had met a very close person. This kind of intimacy from the heart couldn't be faked. Yo, 9 Tails boy, what are you doing? Our situation is very urgent. Master your power and we will go to the battlefield. Oh yeah, Killer Bee, the Hachibi Column Force, saw that Naruto was in a daze. So he walked to the side of Naruto and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. He wanted to remind Naruto that they didn't have enough time. Naruto was patted by Killer Bee, and his whole body trembled involuntarily, like a person who fell into a half-awake state. After Naruto's body trembled, he also recovered from the shock. He looked at the wall where the very clear mural he had been looking at just now, it turned into a wall made of stone bricks. As for the mural that Naruto felt very familiar just now, at this moment, it was completely gone. Although there were some doubts in his heart, Naruto knew that now was not the time for him to worry about this situation. Looking at Killer Bee standing opposite him, Naruto nodded and said to Killer Bee, "You're right. Let's go." "You are right, the current ninja world needs our strength. Now is not the time to worry about some trivial things. What are we going to do next?" Seeing that Naruto was serious, Killer Bee also began to explain to Naruto the role of this ruin. Because of their willingness to be sealed, in fact, most of the tailed beasts are very irritable. Few tailed beasts can recover their calm attitude and communicate effectively with Column Force. But to fully master the power of the tailed beast in his body, The most important thing is to get the approval of the tailed beast in his body. In this lookout, there is a small space attached to it. In this space, the spiritual power of the tailed beast will be independent and coexist with the ninja as column force. The two sides can fight and communicate. If they fight, then one side will completely occupy the spiritual power of the other side. If they communicate, then it is the first step to fully master the power of the tailed beast in their body. Hey Nine Tails boy, you have to lift the seal when you get the power. Enter this space, open your seal, meet the powerful Nine Tails, and become the strongest column force. Oh yeah. With that, Killer Bee stretched out his hand and pointed out the path leading to the small space for Naruto. It was a relief wall that looked quite complete. Chapter 564. Understanding Killer Bee's meaning, Naruto nodded to Killer Bee and slowly walked to the front of the relief sculpture. Although Killer Bee didn't say it very clearly, once it involves spiritual confrontation, it is definitely extremely dangerous. But in order to master the power of the tailed beast in his body, such a risk must be faced. Naruto put his thumb in his mouth and bit his thumb. The blood oozing from the thumb was directly wiped on his palm by Naruto. His hands quickly formed a seal, and a ninjutsu was quickly completed in Naruto's hand. Summoning Jutsu, Naruto pressed his hand on the ground, and with the infusion of chakra, a cloud of smoke also rose from the place where his palm was pressed. The smoke dissipated, and a toad that looked quite strange appeared in front of Naruto. The head and body of this toad were very normal, but its neck was extremely long. A 1-meter-long scroll appeared directly between the toad's head and body. Is this the child of Watergate? The toad saw Naruto's figure the moment it appeared. The conspicuous golden hair and blue eyes quickly let the scroll toad recognize Naruto's identity. Sorry to trouble you. Looking at the scroll toad, Naruto didn't say much and directly said to the toad. The scroll toad also looked at Naruto with a dignified look, but it still nodded to Naruto. The scroll toad was very clear that it was the key to open the seal of the Nine Tails on Naruto's body. When Naruto summoned it, it knew that Naruto was ready. It turned its body, and the huge scroll unfolded almost instantly. The moment the scroll was opened, the runes engraved on the scroll seemed to have gained a life of their own as they kept surging. When the scroll was fully unfolded, all the runes engraved inside the scroll seemed to have lost their final control, and directly rushed out of the scroll one by one. When Naruto saw these runes rushing towards him, he also lifted his clothes, revealing the mysterious seal on his abdomen. When Naruto exposed his abdomen to the air, the runes seemed to have found their target and rushed towards the seal on Naruto's abdomen. When the runes came into contact with Naruto's abdomen, they immediately integrated into Naruto's body. The seal on Naruto's abdomen also began to slowly change as the runes integrated into it. Although the general shape did not change much, it was obvious that the seal was no longer as calm as before. When all the runes integrated into the black seal, a faint red light began to appear on the surface of the seal. This red light was full of a violent feeling. Even though it had a complete tacit understanding with the Hachibi, when it carefully sensed the seal on Naruto's abdomen, it could not help but feel that a wild beast was staring at it with its eyes full of bestiality. The sense of crisis that came from the depths of its soul made Killer Bee involuntarily use the Hachibi's chakra in its body to resist. When it did not use the Hachibi's chakra, although it could feel some pressure, it was still barely able to withstand it. But when it used the Hachibi's chakra in its body, the power that was originally instinctively releasing its aura seemed to have found its target at this moment. It began to release its powerful aura towards Killer Bee with hostility. This feeling, it's really that stinky fox. After sensing this aura, the Hachibi that had been sleeping in Column Force's body also woke up from its slumber. Soon, Hachibi also noticed that his Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, was under the pressure of Kyuubi's killing intent, so he hurriedly said to Killer Bee, "Kill him! Bee, withdraw my chakra. Nine Tails and I have always been in a competitive relationship. He doesn't accept me and I don't accept him. Originally, he was only releasing his aura instinctively, but when you started to use my chakra, he could also feel my aura. Facing his old enemy, no matter what state he is in, he will definitely do his best to show his strength. Hearing the words of the Hachibi in his body, Killer Bee also immediately withdrew the chakra from his body. Sure enough, when Killer Bee completely converged the Bijou chakra in his body, the pressure that was originally exerted on his body disappeared as if it had lost its target. Killer Bee finally had a chance to observe Naruto's state at the moment. When the chakra in his body was no longer tightly guarded by the seal on his body, the originally very violent Nine-Tails chakra surged wildly in his body like a runaway horse. Naruto immediately began to use the method of controlling the chakra that his mother taught him. Relying on his huge chakra, he began to integrate his chakra into the Nine-Tails chakra at all costs. Gradually, a little bit of the Nine-Tails chakra began to be controlled by Naruto. Using this strand of Nine-Tails chakra as a primer, Naruto began to slowly straighten out the violent chakra in his body. And because of the violent increase of the Nine-Tails chakra in his body, Naruto's figure also became the same as when he mobilized the Nine-Tails chakra. His blue pupils turned scarlet and his teeth became wild. But at this moment, Naruto's eyes were very clear. Obviously, he was not affected by the chakra in his body too much. Looking at Naruto's state at the moment, Killer Bee, who was originally not so confident in his heart, couldn't help but feel a little confident in his heart. After all, at this moment, Naruto did not enter the small space that suppressed the tailed beasts to a certain extent, but he could control the violent chakra in his body with his own ability. So once Naruto entered this small space with the help of the space, Naruto still had a great chance to extract the power of the tailed beast in his body and control the Nine-Tails chakra. Chapter 565. Ignoring Killer Bee's gaze, Naruto walked towards the relief sculpture in front of him step by step. At this moment, there was an uncontrollable desire in Naruto's heart for no reason. It was a desire for power, but also a desire for freedom. Naruto didn't know whether such an emotion came from his own heart, but such a desire was so hard to suppress. He slowly pressed his hand on the relief sculpture, and a strange power fluctuation emerged from the relief sculpture. The power fluctuation penetrated into Naruto's body the moment it was produced. Naruto felt that every cell in his body was resonating in a strange way under the influence of this power fluctuation. Naruto felt like he was suddenly drenched from head to toe with cold spring water during the dog days of summer. The strange sense of comfort, the sense of freedom from the shackles, made Naruto's whole body relax involuntarily. At the moment when Naruto involuntarily relaxed under the influence of the power fluctuation, a gravitational force suddenly appeared from the relief sculpture. After Naruto's relaxed body received this gravitational force, he immediately rushed in the direction of the relief sculpture. At this moment, the relief sculpture seemed to become illusory. Naruto's hand, which was originally pressed on it, slowly melted into it. After a while, Naruto's entire body had entered the relief sculpture. Seeing that Naruto had entered the relief sculpture, Killer Bee also nodded slowly and sat where he was originally standing. All he could do now was to patiently wait for the result of the game between Naruto and Nine-Tails. He had already done everything he could to help Naruto on the way here. Now, all he had to rely on was Naruto's own ability and luck. When Naruto entered this small space, he had completely lost consciousness. Naruto's body slowly floated in the nothingness space, and the energy with the ancient breath also slowly rushed into Naruto's body. This energy with ancient aura rushed toward Naruto's head as soon as it entered his body. This aura was the same as the one that helped Sasuke release Kodo Amatsukami after he was controlled by Kodo Amatsukami. As the energy continued to gather towards Naruto's head, Naruto's spirit was finally completely immersed in his own spiritual space. This was a very familiar scene, a place that was quite like a sewer, exuding a cold and damp rotten smell. Naruto has been to this place more than once because this was the place where Nine-Tails was sealed. But unlike before, the water that could only reach his ankles had now directly submerged Naruto's shoulders. At this moment, Naruto was very clear about where he wanted to go. He controlled his body to slowly float up, and instinctively moved his chakra to stand directly on the water as usual. But unlike what Naruto imagined, he didn't stand on the water as usual. Instead, after treading on the water for a while, he fell into the water again. It seems that I can't use my treading technique here? Naruto quickly realized the reason why he couldn't tread on the water, but he wasn't discouraged. He directly used his arms to paddle the water and swam towards the place where Nine Tails was sealed. Soon, a very tall iron gate appeared in front of Naruto. The iron gate, which was originally densely covered with talismans, was now only left with the last and largest talisman. Human! Kyuubi seemed to have sensed Naruto's aura, or perhaps because the powerful seal binding him became weak. The moment he sensed Naruto's aura, Kyuubi behind the iron gate roared. At the same time, Nine Tails' huge head also appeared in front of Naruto. The flame-like gorgeous fur, scarlet beast eyes, and huge mouth all showed Naruto how dangerous it was standing in front of him. Nine Tails stared at Naruto in front of it. Its violent chakra overflowed from behind the iron gate. Like a red bubble, it quickly expelled all the sewage that was originally filled with sewage at this moment. The red bubble had almost covered the entire space of the sewer in an instant. A large part of Naruto's body was also covered by the red bubbles. The red bubbles were the manifestation of Nine Tails' chakra, so just like Nine Tails' chakra, it gave Naruto a strong burning sensation. It wasn't just the burning sensation. At this moment, Naruto's spirit was also bewitched by Nine Tails to a certain extent. The voice of Nine Tails kept appearing in Naruto's mind. Uncover it. Uncover this talisman. Uncover this talisman, and you will obtain endless power. Uncover this talisman, and you will defeat all your enemies. Uncover this talisman, and the difficulties surrounding your heart will be solved. Nine Tails' bewitching voice kept ringing in Naruto's mind, but Naruto's eyes were exceptionally clear. Naruto's mouth seemed to be chanting something. Every time Naruto finished a sentence, the Nine Tails chakra that wrapped around Naruto faded a little. This was the chant that Shina Kushina taught Naruto after learning that the Nine Tails in Naruto's body had gone out of control. Although it couldn't completely suppress Nine Tails, this chant could protect the spirit of the person chanting it. If it were any other time, Naruto, who had recovered, would never get close to the Nine Tails seal. But now, Naruto came here to open the Nine Tails seal so that he could control the power of the Nine Tails. So Naruto still slowly walked towards the place where the seal talisman was located. Nine Tails could naturally feel that its bewitching didn't work, but when it saw Naruto walking towards it step by step, the pursuit of freedom still drove Nine Tails to slowly shape the chakra that it had released. Steps made of red foam appeared in front of Naruto, but Naruto wasn't afraid at all. Like a determined warrior about to charge into battle, he walked up the steps step by step. Finally, Naruto's figure had appeared in front of the seal talisman, and even a small corner of the huge seal talisman was uncovered. Nine Tails, who had been staring fiercely at Naruto, couldn't help but have some desire for freedom in its violent eyes. The seal was lifted. Chapter 566. Taking off the remaining talisman, the iron gate that sealed Nine Tails finally appeared in front of Naruto. In the position that was originally covered by the talisman, there was a round thing that looked like a door lock. Looking at the strangely shaped door lock, Naruto slowly looked at Nine Tails in the gate. Although the moment he noticed that Naruto was looking at him, Nine Tails restrained all the desire for freedom in his eyes, but Naruto could still see a trace of desire in Nine Tails' eyes. Who doesn't desire freedom? Even an unintelligent bird would instinctively fly towards the nearest tree the moment it was released from its cage, let alone a tailed beast that had intelligence in its body. Speaking of which, what did the tailed beasts do wrong? They were sealed by human beings for most of the time. Just because their power was too great, just because human beings coveted their great power, the tailed beasts had to lose their most important freedom. Without freedom, they would rather die. For every person with intelligence or even a thinking life, freedom is the most precious thing. Did the tailed beasts really have such a strong hostility to human beings at the beginning of their birth? Did the tailed beasts really like to slaughter living creatures? Naruto didn't know. Even many people who were proficient in the history of the shinobi world and even myths didn't know. All they could know was the story of the tailed beasts slaughtering the human world in the short hundreds of thousands of years. Naruto didn't know why, but there was a kind of pity in his heart when he looked at Nine Tails. Although he was threatened by Nine Tails more than once, and even when he used Nine Tails' chakra, he went berserk again and again. The tragedy of his childhood was even because of such a powerful tailed beast sealed in his body. It is undeniable that there was a time when Naruto resented the existence of such a creature in his body. But with the growth of age and the improvement of experience, Naruto found that he didn't hate the tailed beast so much. The reason why he became the Column Force wasn't because of the tailed beast's will. So who else can he hate? The one who sealed the tailed beast in his body was his father, the masked man who released the tailed beast from his mother's body. After thinking about it for a while, Naruto was surprised to find that he couldn't treat anyone with resentment, because all of this seemed to be a script arranged by a pair of invisible hands. Everything appeared so just right and unexpected. So gradually, Naruto learned to accept his identity as the Column Force, and accept the fact that he couldn't resist the fact that it had happened to him. Although the Nine Tails is a tailed beast, it is also an animal. Perhaps due to its animal instincts, the Nine Tails could still sense human emotions. Moreover, the current Naruto almost didn't conceal the pity and grief in his eyes at all. In a trance, the Nine Tails even felt that Naruto's figure had quietly changed, turning into the extraordinary figure that stood in front of it like a god when it was still a child. It shook its head with all its might, expelling this ridiculous thought from its mind. Now isn't the time to think about such nonsense. Unlocking the seal and regaining my freedom is the most important thing. Naruto withdrew his gaze and looked at the door lock in front of him. Naruto stretched out his right hand in front of him and slowly opened his palm. There was obviously no fluctuation of chakra, but black runes suddenly drilled out from Naruto's palm. Black runes constantly condensed in Naruto's palm. If one observed carefully, it wouldn't be difficult to notice that these black runes that constantly appeared in Naruto's hand were the runes that rushed into Naruto's body from the scroll toad. The black runes constantly appeared in Naruto's palm. The black runes were like pieces of building blocks that constantly pieced together in Naruto's hand to form a shape. Finally, when the last rune was integrated into such a building block, a black object that looked a bit strange but was obviously a key appeared in Naruto's hand. Nine Tails? Naruto looked at the strange black key in his hand and cast his gaze at Nine Tails in the iron gate. I don't know what kind of mood I should have to face you now, but whether it is my heart or the current situation of the shinobi world, I have to choose to unlock your seal. You have been in my body all this time, so you should also know what is happening in the shinobi world through me. If Akatsuki wants to resurrect the Jubi, all 9 of you will be pulled out. Although I don't know if you are really pulled out, not only will I lose my life because of the Jubi, but you will also be able to maintain your independent will after being integrated into the Jubi. I'm not threatening you, I'm just stating such a fact to you objectively. Although I'm a little ashamed, I really don't want to lose my life like this, and I don't want the shinobi world to be shrouded in the void of Tsukuyomi space by Akatsuki. So, now I will unlock the last layer of the seal for you, and I will give you the choice of everything. In the end, you will fight side by side with me or both of us will suffer. I will leave it all to you. It has to be said that after being in contact with Watergate for so long, Naruto has become eloquent. Just like the tone used by Watergate to persuade others, there are not so many empty reasons, but objectively stating one fact after another, and providing a win-win choice for the other party. Ignoring the expression of Nine Tails, who was obviously lost in thought, Naruto directly inserted the black key in his hand into the gate, and with the sound of the mechanism, the gate representing the last layer of the seal was finally opened. Almost in a blink of an eye, the dark sewer began to fade away like a painting that had been washed. When everything disappeared, Naruto and Nine Tails all appeared in a seemingly endless white space. Naruto finally saw the full appearance of Nine Tails this time. The huge figure with red fur and the swaying Nine Tails behind him made Naruto feel the irrepressible powerful aura and elegant posture of Nine Tails. Chapter 567. After staying in the cage for a long time, he returned to nature. Although this sentence can't completely describe the mood of Ninetales at this moment, it's not far from it. At this moment, Ninetales doesn't know if it's because of freedom or some other reason, but he's not as violent and aggressive as he was when he was sealed in Naruto's body. Human? Looking at Naruto in front of him, Ninetales slowly said to Naruto, "I have to say, what you said just now really moved me. You are very smart, and you have already grasped what I desire the most at the moment you decided to negotiate with me. Freedom. What a tempting word." In front of Naruto, Ninetales didn't hide his desire for freedom at this moment. After hearing the words of Ninetales, Naruto's heart also slowly relaxed a little, because since Ninetales can say such a thing, it at least proves one point, that is, there is a certain possibility of reaching a consensus with Ninetales. "So what is your decision?" Looking at Ninetales, Naruto said to him, "Although I'm suppressed to a certain extent due to the seal in your body, I still have a certain level of perception towards the outside world. Of course, I understand how dangerous the outside world is, but you have ignored a very important point." Kyuubi's pair of beast eyes stared at Naruto, with a hint of contempt in his eyes. "Humph! I myself have strength beyond most people in the shinobi world. Even if I leave you, I can survive in the shinobi world with my strength. Don't think that because so many column force were captured, that the ability of a bijou is limited. The power of each bijou is beyond the reach of human beings. The reason why so many column force were captured is because the seal on the bijou suppressed a certain amount of power. If a bijou really breaks free from the restriction of the seal, then no matter who wants to capture us, they will have to pay a great price. But unlike us, you are a column force. Once you lose the source of power like us, your strength will be greatly reduced. So the reality is, you need me, but I don't need you." Although Naruto has no way to verify what Ninetales said, the strong confidence exuded from Ninetales made Naruto believe the truth of what Ninetales said. Because as Ninetales said, if Ninetales devours his spirit and reappear in the shinobi world with his body, as long as he goes through an extremely short recovery period, Ninetales can recover his strength with his almost endless chakra. And if he can't obtain the power of Ninetales, then he really can't protect himself. Boy, you're lucky. I've been staying in your body for a long time, and to a certain extent I've watched you grow up. Although you don't seem so smart most of the time, and sometimes you're simply a model of one-track mind. But whether it's the toughness in your body that ordinary people don't have, or the faint aura that I feel unexpectedly familiar with, it's all affecting me, making me want to give you a chance." Ninetales, who was half lying on the ground, suddenly straightened up and said to Naruto with a serious look in his eyes, "I will use my power and the power of this small world to condense a clone with the same ability as you. This is the opportunity I'm giving you. Do your best to defeat him. I will completely open a part of my power to you, so that you will have a powerful strength that you have never had before. Do you agree with this proposal?" Although Ninetales seemed to be asking for Naruto's opinion, Ninetales' chakra, which was as majestic as the vast ocean, rushed out of his body. In the chaotic world where Naruto's body was floating, a transparent golden energy with a somewhat ancient aura rushed directly into Naruto's spiritual world and mixed with Ninetales' power. The two powers entangled and influenced each other, and a figure was gradually molded by the two powers. With the continuous infusion of the Kyuubi's chakra and the golden energy constantly exerting its power, this figure, which originally looked quite illusory, has become solid at this moment. The figure gradually turned into Naruto's appearance, but unlike Naruto, the clone created by Ninetales looked like it was shrouded in a layer of black gauze, and the whole figure looked a little gray. Naruto's golden hair and yellow skin have become gray at this moment, and Naruto's blue eyes directly turned into Kyuubi's eyes. The same aura as Ninetales drifted out of the clone, bloodthirsty and violent. The clone stood opposite Naruto as if it was born for battle. Naruto did not answer Ninetales' question with his mouth, but directly told Ninetales with his actions that he accepted such a trial. Naruto skillfully summoned a shadow clone. With the help of the shadow clone, a sphere condensed from chakra appeared in his hand, Futon Rasengan. The shadow clone disappeared automatically, and Naruto dragged the Rasengan in his hand and controlled his chakra to rush towards his leg. Naruto's physical fitness was very outstanding, and at this moment, under the stimulation of chakra, it became extremely powerful. And this strength was naturally reflected in Naruto's speed at this moment. It was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Naruto appeared beside Ninetales' clone. During this whole process, Ninetales' clone did not move at all. Although Naruto didn't quite understand what was going on with this Ninetales' clone, Naruto knew that as long as the Rasengan in his hand can hit Ninetales' clone, then he will have a great advantage in the following battle. So Naruto did not hesitate to press the Rasengan in his hand on Ninetales' clone. Seeing the Rasengan in his hand getting closer and closer to Ninetales' clone, Naruto's eyes couldn't help but carry the joy of a successful attack. As the Rasengan got closer and closer to Ninetales' clone, a thick layer of dark red mist suddenly appeared on Ninetales' clone. At this moment, Naruto's speed was already very fast, but Ninetales' clone was obviously better. The palm wrapped in dark red mist directly grabbed Naruto's wrist that was holding the Rasengan, and with a slight force in his hand, the dark red mist also invaded Naruto's wrist under the guidance of Ninetales' clone, cutting off the chakra supply from Naruto's Rasengan. Pop, like a bubble bursting. The Rasengan with powerful destructive power dissipated directly in the air at this moment. Obviously, in order to break free from Naruto's control, the Ninetales' clone directly dislocated his arm with Naruto's power. Although it was such a huge price to pay, the effect was naturally very outstanding. Regardless of his dislocated arm, the Ninetales' clone used his strange dark red chakra to condense a dark red Rasengan in his hand. Although one of his arms was grabbed by Naruto, the Ninetales' clone still turned around and directly pressed the Rasengan in his hand towards Naruto's body. He must not let himself be hit by such an attack. Rasengan itself is one of the ninjutsu that Naruto is very proficient in, so he is naturally very clear about the power of Rasengan. It is precisely because of this that Naruto knows that he must not completely withstand such an attack. Otherwise, no matter how hard he struggles in the battle after that, failure will become inevitable. Naruto directly released his hand that was tightly holding the Ninetales' clone's wrist. Then he stepped hard on the ground, and his whole body flew backward. However, the Ninetales' clone did not give up the attack because of this. The dark red Rasengan that could only be held in his hand suddenly flew out from the hand of the Ninetales' clone at this moment. The Rasengan attacked Naruto directly. Naruto was very surprised when he saw that the Rasengan could directly fly out of his hand. It was precisely because of this surprise that Naruto injected more chakra into his leg, and his speed soared again. Carefully observing the Rasengan that was flying towards him, Naruto found that there was a faint, almost imperceptible dark red thread between the dark red Rasengan and the palm of the Ninetales' clone at this moment. This is a technique that is often used to control puppets and ninjutsu, that is, chakra thread. Whether it is Tienwood Leaf, who is good at controlling ninjutsu, or Kankuro, who Naruto is more familiar with in Sunagakure, they have used chakra thread in front of Naruto more than once. Now the Ninetales' clone is obviously using his chakra control ability that is far beyond Naruto's original body to directly create such a chakra thread to continuously inject chakra into the dark red Rasengan that was separated from his hand. But after all, Rasengan is not a simple ninjutsu, it requires fine control of chakra. Even the Ninetales' clone at this moment does not have the ability to completely maintain the power of Rasengan through chakra thread. So at this moment, the Rasengan flying towards Naruto actually weakened with the increase of distance and the passage of time. Whether in terms of size or aura, it is obviously weakened by more than a little bit. Looking at the dark red Rasengan constantly shrinking, Naruto's heart began to constantly estimate the power of the dark red Rasengan cast by the Ninetales' clone. Finally, when the Rasengan was worn down to the size of a ping-pong ball, Naruto directly punched the Rasengan with his hand covered with chakra. Bang! A loud noise was directly produced at the moment when Naruto's fist touched the Rasengan, and the huge airwave even lifted the clothes worn by the Ninetales' clone standing a little far away. At this moment, The expression on the face of the Nine-Tails clone was no longer the stupefied expression when he first appeared. Instead, there was a bit of indifference and playfulness which looked very strange. A mocking smile hung on the corner of the Nine-Tails clone's mouth. The eyes of the Nine-Tails clone just stared at the storm that appeared because of the explosion of the Rasengan. Nine-Tails, who has been watching coldly from the side, also looked at the clone created by the energy in this space with a strange look. Although he can still control the existence of this clone at will, it is obvious that this clone is no longer completely under his control at this moment. Chapter 569. Using a clone that isn't completely under his control to test Naruto is a good choice. The most important thing is that the aura coming from this clone makes it difficult for Nine-Tails to arouse any hostility in his heart. In this case, Nine-Tails naturally used a laissez-faire attitude towards this clone. The chaotic storm finally subsided, and Naruto, who was in the center of the storm, naturally reappeared. The clothes worn on Naruto's body were slightly tattered, and many places on Naruto's body had large and small holes because of the destruction of the sharp wind blades in the storm group. At this moment, Naruto's eyes were no longer so clear, and his eyes were filled with a sense of violence at the moment. His originally blue eyes were also quietly covered with a layer of scarlet light. The wounds on Naruto's body began to heal quickly at this moment, and there was even a faint smoke rising near the wounds. Looking at Naruto's rapidly healing body, Nine-Tails couldn't help but show a touch of surprise in his eyes. He originally thought that this was just a simple spiritual space, but he didn't expect that Naruto could actually use his extraordinary recovery ability. The Uzumaki clan itself has chakra capacity and recovery ability that ordinary ninjas can't reach, and Naruto, as the Nine-Tails column force, has used the chakra of Nine-Tails a lot over the years, so Naruto's body has also undergone a certain degree of change under the long-term use of chakra by Nine-Tails. The most intuitive thing is Naruto's extraordinary recovery ability. Even Nine-Tails didn't expect that Naruto's body could accommodate his weak chakra and burst it out at this moment. Seeing Naruto's state, Nine-Tails' clone, who had a subtle smile on his face, also quickly restrained all the expressions on his face, as cold and indifferent as when he first appeared. Don't know if it's because the Nine-Tails chakra in his body broke out, or because the injury just now stimulated Naruto's thinking. At this moment, Naruto seems to have entered a violent state. A simple seal appeared in his hand, and clouds of smoke rose from Naruto's side. Ninjutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. Almost roaring, Naruto shouted the name of the ninjutsu he used at the moment. At this moment, Naruto didn't have a trace of the Nine-Tails clone just now. At this moment, Naruto seems to have fallen into a strange state. At this moment, Naruto is more like a beast than a human. Roar! 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 As the clouds of smoke dispersed, clones with the same red eyes appeared beside Naruto. Dozens of clones shouted together, roaring together, like tigers roaring in the forest, full of a beast's ferocity. This kid, looking at Naruto, Nine-Tails' eyes flashed with a trace of appreciation. Perhaps from the appearance, Naruto has completely lost his mind at this moment, but Nine-Tails knows that although the chakra contained in Naruto's body can help Naruto quickly recover his injuries, but that's it. If such a small amount of chakra could completely affect Naruto's mind, Nine-Tails would have rushed out of such a seal long ago. How strong Naruto's mind is, perhaps only Nine-Tails hidden in Naruto's body can understand better. So the current state of Naruto is actually the result of Naruto's deliberate guidance. Using the Nine-Tails chakra in his body as a primer, he directly released all the beastly nature in his body, using his most violent and most reckless attack to tear all the enemies standing in front of him to shreds. At this moment, hundreds of shadow clones and Naruto's original body all ran wildly towards Nine-Tails' clone. The shadow clones and Naruto's original body were like beasts at this moment, running on all fours towards Nine-Tails' clone. At this moment, Naruto's state was very physical. Although his body was completely following his instincts, Naruto's consciousness seemed to be stripped of all thoughts and emotions at this moment. He was like a machine that coldly analyzed all the information in the battle. Judging from the situation just now, Nine-Tails' clone's ability to control chakra was obviously above his own. In this case, if he were to widen the distance between himself and Nine-Tails' clone and enter a long-range battle, he would undoubtedly fall into a disadvantage. After comprehensive analysis, Naruto was surprised to find that the only place where he could see a chance of winning against Nine-Tails' clone was in close combat. After all, his physical fitness was similar to that of Nine-Tails' clone. Although close combat skills are very important in the final analysis, it still depends on the will of both sides. If it's a competition of will, Naruto believes that he will never lose to such a cold, puppet-like guy. Naruto and his shadow clones quickly approached Nine-Tails' clone. Under the control of Naruto and the deliberate influence of the beastly nature of the shadow clones, almost all the parts of their body that could cause damage to the enemy were used to attack Nine-Tails' clone. Nine-Tails' clone didn't use shadow clones to deal with it like Naruto did. Instead, he stood in the same place without using any ninjutsu and directly took a defensive posture. Looking at the shadow clones that attacked him fiercely, Nine-Tails' clone didn't show any nervous expression. His eyes and face were still full of indifference as before. In an understatement, Nine-Tails' clone waved his arms and directly broke the shadow clones that attacked him one by one. Although the nine-tailed clone's movements weren't that fast, there was no way to dodge the nine-tailed clone's every move. That kind of feeling was vaguely similar to when Nangongja once showed his strength in front of Naruto. He couldn't avoid it at all. The waving arms were like heavy hammers, attacking Naruto's shadow clones one after another. Originally, Naruto hoped to use his shadow clones to consume a lot of stamina of Nine-Tails' clone, but if all his shadow clones were consumed here, it would be too much of a loss. Chapter 570. Watching his clones being destroyed one by one, Naruto also felt the pain from the attacks on his clones. Enduring the continuous pain, the madness hidden in Naruto's eyes became clearer and clearer. As the madness became stronger and stronger, the attacks of the remaining shadow clones and Naruto's true body became more and more relentless. With the strengthening of Naruto and his shadow clone jutsu's attacks, Kyuubi's clone jutsu gradually felt some pressure. The appearance of defeating Naruto's clones with ease had been broken. On the contrary, Naruto's clones would occasionally receive a few attacks from them. Although madness in battle might not necessarily allow one to win the battle, such madness was enough to make the enemy feel difficult to deal with. Seeing that their attacks were effective, Naruto and his clones were also excited. The opportunity to win seemed to have appeared in front of Naruto at that moment. As long as he could continue to fight like this, Naruto felt that he had a chance of winning. Realizing that he had fallen into a certain disadvantage, Nine-Tails' clone's eyes suddenly flashed with a golden light. This ray of light was like the finishing touch. After it appeared, the nine-tailed avatar seemed to come alive. And the moment this golden light appeared, the connection between Nine-Tails and this clone was completely cut off. And the moment the connection was cut off, Nine-Tails finally felt a familiar aura from the clone. Although a long time had passed, the moment this aura appeared, a thin layer of mist uncontrollably appeared in Nine-Tailed Beast's eyes. "Old man of the six paths?" Nine-Tails murmured softly, his eyes revealing endless recollections. If Nine-Tails had to choose the happiest time of his life, it would be the time when he was still young and under the protection of the six paths, where he didn't have to worry about life and death and only had to play freely. "I can't go back. No matter what, I can't go back to those days." Nine-Tails' eyes were filled with reminiscence, but more than that, there was a sadness that couldn't be erased. Nine-Tails. A slightly old voice suddenly appeared in Nine-Tails' mind. Hearing the name that he hadn't heard for a long time, Nine-Tails' expression couldn't help but become absent-minded. Faintly, Naruto, who was fighting Kyuubi's clone in front of him, and the white boundless space disappeared at this moment. A figure with white hair, white clothes, and many wrinkles on his cheeks and eyes that revealed endless wisdom suddenly appeared before Nine-Tails. "Old man of the six paths, you didn't die." Yes, the person who appeared in front of Nine-Tails and called out Nine-Tails' name is Six Paths Sannin, known as the ancestor of the shinobi world. Hearing Nine Tails' exclamation, Six Paths Sennin's face revealed a helpless smile. Slowly shaking his head, his half-opened eyes flashed with a deep glint as he said to Nine-Tailed, "Don't worry, I'm not going to let you go. Nine Tails, I have been dead for many years. Now I'm just a remnant of my will that I forcibly left behind before I left the world. If it wasn't related to the future of the shinobi world, I would never appear. This time, I appeared in front of you for the blonde boy that is being created by you and me." When Nine Tails heard Six Paths Sennin's words and knew that Six Paths Sennin appeared for Naruto, not only did he not have any doubts in his eyes, but he also understood. A strong physique, an amazing amount of chakra, an optimistic and fearless attitude, and more importantly, a familiar aura that has been faintly emitting from his body. Is this human really related to you? Sure enough, Nine Tails wasn't unaware. Among the Nine Tails can be said to be the most arrogant one. After the baptism of time, this kind of arrogance has not faded, and it has become more and more obvious. It has developed into a kind of arrogance that can be called arrogance. For all people weaker than himself, Nine Tails doesn't put him in his eyes. Although Naruto's performance has been good, this alone is not enough for Nine Tails to give Naruto so many opportunities. He is the reincarnation of Azura's child. Hearing Nine Tails' question and seeing Nine Tails' slightly determined eyes, Six Paths Sennin knew that he can't deliberately avoid this question. And although this is considered a secret, it's not a secret for Nine Tails who has survived from ancient times to the present. You must already know the current situation of the shinobi world, right? In the darkness, there is a force stirring the wind and clouds. In this unprecedented Fourth Shinobi World War, I predict that there will be a person full of ambition who will summon the Jubi that I have sealed. In ancient times, the ten-tailed beast turned countless people into puppet-like existences without consciousness. That scene is still vivid in my mind, and every life is worth protecting. So I hope you can help this child calm the turmoil in the shinobi world and do your best to prevent the Jubi's resurrection. I'm just a remnant of my will now, and there's very little I can do. And from what I've observed, the two children, Azura and Indra, in this life, didn't fall into a completely opposite situation like the countless previous reincarnations. In this life, between Azura and Indra, a powerful bond has miraculously appeared. When Azura and Indra truly unite, they will be able to create an unprecedented miracle. Looking at the hopeful look in Six Paths Sennin's eyes, Nine Tails was speechless. Nine Tails has seen Azura and Indra's first reincarnation with his own eyes. They are two powerful ninjas who are comparable to or even stronger than him. But in the current Nine Tails view, these two people have a huge flaw in their temperament. Even if Azura and Indra appear in the shinobi world, they may not be able to stop the nine-tailed beasts from gathering together to form the Jubi. Not to mention the current Azura and Indra who have experienced countless reincarnations, and even their memories from ancient times have begun to become blurred. Chapter 571. For some reason, although Nine Tails could feel a familiar aura from the Sage of the Six Paths, he still felt a sense of vigilance. But in Kyuubi's heart, he couldn't help but feel a sense of vigilance. It seemed that the Rikudo Sennin who gave him life, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, wasn't someone he could completely rely on and could even harm him. This feeling was inexplicable, but Nine-Tailed Fox believed it without a doubt. Compared to what she saw and heard, Kyuubi believed more in her intuition that there was no need to doubt. Sage of the Six Paths, what do you need me to do? Looking at the Sage of the Six Paths standing opposite him, Nine Tails still asked the Sage of the Six Paths despite having a certain degree of vigilance. I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to abide by the agreement between you and Naruto. The Sage of the Six Paths said to Nine Tails with some confidence. You've watched Naruto grow up since he was a child. I'm sure you know how much potential he has. With my blessing, this doppelganger's strength has even surpassed Naruto's own. I won't go easy on him in this matter. Ninetales also believed that the Sage of the Six Paths would never go easy on him in this matter, because not only would it be an insult to Naruto, but it would also be an insult to himself. After taking a deep look at the Sage of the Six Paths, Ninetales slowly nodded his head. After all, the Sage of the Six Paths' request did not conflict with his original intention. He even increased the difficulty for Naruto instead of reducing the difficulty for Naruto. In a trance, the Sage of the Six Paths in front of Ninetales had completely disappeared at this moment. In front of Ninetales was still the doppelganger and Naruto who were fighting. It was only a short period of absent-mindedness, but the current situation of the battle had completely changed. Ninetales' doppelganger ruthlessly dislocated his arm to break free from Naruto's fighting rhythm. Although Ninetales' doppelganger reattached his arm later, the dislocation still affected the fighting ability of the arm. After Naruto noticed this, he began to madly attack Ninetales' doppelganger's arm that was not very flexible. At this moment, the battle between Ninetales' doppelganger and Naruto was almost non-technical. They were just exchanging blows. Ninetales' doppelganger's punch directly hit Naruto's cheek. After receiving the punch firmly, Naruto immediately stretched out his hand and grabbed Ninetales' doppelganger's wrist that was attacking him. He immediately clenched his other hand and attacked Ninetales' doppelganger's abdomen. The abdomen was the part of the human body that was most likely to feel pain. Naruto's punch directly made the expressionless Ninetales' doppelganger's facial muscles twitch. Seeing this, Ninetales had more or less understood the final outcome of this battle. Close combat tested one's willpower the most. When one's spirit and body became extremely tired, the only thing that could drive a person to continue fighting was a strong will. And compared to Naruto, who had always been fighting with high spirits, Ninetales' doppelganger was really not worth mentioning. At the end of the day, Ninetales' doppelganger was just a puppet-like existence created by mixing a trace of the Six Tao's power and Ninetales' chakra. Looking at Naruto's bloody body, Ninetales' eyes couldn't help but flash with a trace of struggle. To be honest, Ninetales really didn't think much of Naruto's current strength. If he really broke free from all the shackles, Ninetales believed that he would definitely become stronger than Naruto. However, whether it was the words that the Six Tao Immortal said to him just now or the vague feeling he got from Naruto, they were all affecting Ninetales, making Ninetales feel that he was the most suitable choice to be with Naruto. Forget it, I'll hold back a little and let Naruto control a part of my strength. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground sounded in Ninetales' ears. Looking toward the sound, Ninetales' doppelganger had been punched to the ground by Naruto. His body, which was already somewhat illusory, finally disappeared without a trace at this moment. Seeing that his enemy was finally defeated by him, Naruto suddenly couldn't bear the fatigue in his body and mind after experiencing such a battle with someone who was evenly matched and even slightly stronger than him. As the fatigue hit him, Naruto finally sat on the ground. But there was a bright smile on Naruto's face. At this moment, Naruto was undoubtedly happy, because in the battle with Ninetales' doppelganger, Naruto actually learned a lot of tactics and fighting methods that he didn't think of before from Ninetales' doppelganger. More importantly, after defeating the Ninetales' doppelganger, it was equivalent to gaining the approval of Ninetales. Am I finally going to break free from such a powerless state? Looking at the bright smile on Naruto's face and the glimmer of hope in his eyes, Ninetales couldn't help but think of his childhood. The same ignorance, fearlessness, and recklessness. Ninetales finally vaguely understood why he was so close to Naruto. To a large extent, Naruto was very similar to himself who hadn't experienced the hardships of time. It's precisely because he can no longer have this kind of mood, so Kyuubi actually faintly hopes that he can protect Naruto, so that Naruto can always maintain this kind of smile and hope. Naruto, who was sitting on the ground, seemed to be aware of Ninetales' slightly gentle gaze. The smile on his face became brighter, and he clenched his wounded hand that was still dripping blood into a fist and extended it towards Ninetales. Stinking brat! Looking at Naruto's appearance, for the first time, Ninetales didn't call Naruto an ice-cold human. Instead, he affectionately called Naruto stinking brat. Do your best. Let's guard our future well. After saying this, Ninetales didn't care about Naruto's reaction. He suddenly opened his mouth. A blazing red chakra ball condensed in Ninetales' mouth, but Naruto didn't feel the slightest bit of hostility. The chakra ball that exuded a powerful aura rushed directly towards Naruto and wrapped Naruto in it. Chapter 572. Sitting in the ruins, Killer Bee, the Hachibi column force, was sitting cross-legged on the open space. In his hand, he was holding the ninja sword of Kisame Kisame, the member of Akatsuki that he killed before. Kisame is a very magical sword, because it is not like an icicle and emotionless weapon, but more like a living creature. As the owner of the sword, he needs to inject his chakra into the Kisame to feed it, and even take time to communicate with it. At this moment, Killer Bee is using the majestic Bijou chakra in his body to feed the shark's muscles, constantly feeling the emotions of the shark's muscles, and constantly using his own chakra to wash the shark's muscles. The reason why Killer Bee is constantly using his chakra to cleanse the Kisame is because he found that there is a part of it that no matter how much power he mobilizes, there is no way to invade it. It is precisely because of this part of the Kisame that a kind of vigilance appeared in Killer Bee's heart. After all, the defeat of Ghost Mermaid and Ghost Mermaid was reasonable, but it went way too smoothly. Just when Killer Bee was preparing to go deeper and even forcibly use his chakra to break through this part, a strong fluctuation suddenly appeared in the relief sculpture that entered the small space. Naruto, or Ninetales, Hachibi, who was sealed in Killer Bee's body, felt the powerful pressure of the nine-tailed beast's aura from the relief sculpture almost instantly. However, Hachibi was not sure who had come out of the small space and was in charge of the situation at the moment. Killer Bee naturally knows what Hachibi is worried about at this moment. If Ninetales really invaded Naruto's body, with the hostility of Ninetales to mankind, the threat to the ninja world is not less than the Akatsuki organization that is waging war on the entire ninja world at this moment. The chakra in his body surged, and even the Hachibi chakra in his body was mobilized by Killer Bee. At this moment, a part of Killer Bee's body also showed the characteristics of Hachibi. The Kisame in Killer Bee's hand felt the powerful chakra coming from Killer Bee's body, and like a hungry shark, it constantly devoured the chakra that approached it. However, the chakra that the Kisame could devour was just a drop in the ocean compared to the chakra that was constantly emerging from Killer Bee's body, so Killer Bee didn't pay much attention to it. Finally, the powerful fluctuation from the relief sculpture finally stopped, and Killer Bee's hand holding the Kisame also became stronger. Naruto's body was wrapped in the golden chakra flame, and the flame condensed a pair of flaming ears with the characteristics of a fox on his head. Naruto has now entered the true Ninetales chakra mode. A powerful momentum came from Naruto's body, but Naruto has also noticed the strong burden on his body. This mode can't be used for too long, otherwise it will definitely endanger the foundation of his body. After checking his physical condition, Naruto also saw Killer Bee standing in front of him with a vigilant face. "Uncle B, don't be so nervous. It's me. I have reached an agreement with Ninetales. I can use the power of Ninetales without any hindrance." Naruto showed his signature smile to Killer Bee. Naruto's body was burning with the golden chakra flame. His bright smile combined with the golden flame burning on his body made him feel as bright as the sun. But suddenly Naruto felt a kind of malice from the Kisame in Killer Bee's hand, as if piercing his heart. He instinctively mobilized the chakra in his body. A giant chakra hand appeared behind Naruto's back. Under Naruto's control, the giant chakra hand directly grabbed the barbed blade of the Kisame. The chakra flame burning on the giant hand seemed to have encountered gasoline at this moment. It spread directly from the giant chakra hand, and almost in a moment, it had already burned the entire skin of the shark. Killer Bee knew that Naruto would never harm him, so he immediately let go of the Kisame and let it fall directly to the ground. Yo, Naruto boy has become stronger. The Kisame is very strange. You and I will work together to discover the mystery. Oh yeah, Killer Bee said to Naruto with a strange voice, and Naruto also quickly understood Killer Bee's meaning. After all, Killer Bee had been holding the Kisame in his hand for a long time. Naturally, he was clearer than Naruto about some of the weird things. When the chakra flame burned on Naruto's body, he couldn't feel its power. But when the chakra flame attached to the Kisame, its terrifying destructive power was directly displayed. Not only was the temperature terrifying, but more importantly, the solid shell on the surface of the Kisame actually had a tendency to disintegrate at this moment. Wah wah! After the Kisame suffered unbearable damage, it let out a strange roar like a living creature. However, Naruto didn't let go of the chakra hand holding the Kisame. He just let the Kisame roar strangely. Finally, as if the Kisame couldn't withstand such damage, a powerful chakra burst out from its body. But this powerful chakra that burst out from the Kisame was not the chakra that Killer Bee fed it. Instead, it had another familiar feeling. In the Nine Tails chakra mode, Naruto's perception of chakra became very sensitive. From this kind of chakra, Naruto quickly sensed the owner of the Kisame. Kisame, Kisame? Hearing Naruto's slightly surprised cry, Killer Bee, who was standing on the side, couldn't help but understand. Sure enough, Kisame Kisame still has a backup plan? As soon as Naruto's slightly surprised voice fell, the chakra flame wrapped around the Kisame was directly dispersed by the powerful chakra that burst out from the Kisame. The shape of the Kisame also gradually changed, from the shape of a Kisame to a human shape. And this human shape transformed from the Kisame had a face that was almost identical to the Kisame Kisame. After a short period of sluggishness, the Kisame Kisame took a deep look at Naruto and Killer Bee standing opposite it. It didn't choose to fight directly. Instead, it directly turned around and increased its speed, trying to get away from Naruto and Killer Bee. Chapter 573. Seeing that Kisame Kisame suddenly appeared in front of them instead of Sharkbone, and had no intention to fight at all, Naruto and Killer Bee felt that this was a conspiracy. After all, Kisame Kisame made such an act of faking his death. There must be a purpose. Chase! Naruto and Killer Bee had such a thought at the same time. Killer Bee and Naruto both increased their speed and chased after Kisame Kisame. However, whether it was because the Kisame ghost shark had retained some of its strength before, or because it had fused with the shark's muscles, its physical fitness had greatly improved. The Kisame ghost shark was able to rely on its speed to leave behind the two Jinchuriki, who had been blessed by the tailed beasts. While rushing, Kisame Kisame also began to sense the powerful Hachibi chakra in his body from Killer Bee. This powerful chakra that belonged to Hachibi was actually the real purpose of Kisame Kisame. In Akatsuki organization, Kisame Kisame was one of the few people who really knew about Uchiha Obito's almost delusional Eye of the Moon plan in advance. His experience since childhood made Kisame Kisame very disappointed in this world. Uchiha Obito appeared in front of a person who was full of disappointment in this world, and used his silver tongue to describe such an illusory world for Kisame Kisame. Because there was no goal for him to fight for, Kisame 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 also unconsciously regarded Uchiha Obito's almost delusional plan as a pursuit that he could fight for. Originally, Kisame Kisame Kisame's fake death was actually to let himself follow Killer Bee, who had a high status in Kumoshinobu village, to explore what kind of plan the 5 great ninja villages were going to use to fight against Akatsuki and Uchiha Obito. But he didn't expect that after entering the Land of Lightning, Killer Bee didn't return to Kumoshinobu village to participate in the planning of the battle plan. Instead, he brought Uzumaki Naruto from Woodleaf village to this ruin. Along the way, the conversation between Naruto and Killer Bee was naturally heard by Kisame Kisame Kisame. So Kisame 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 also slightly changed his plan. The resurrection of Jubi requires a huge amount of chakra from the body of the 9 Jinchuriki. Now, 7 of the 9 Jinchuriki have been collected by Akatsuki, and only the Hachibi Jinchuriki and Kyubi Jinchuriki have not been captured yet. However, there was not only one way to resurrect the Jubi. Before he came here, Black Zetsu, who had been acting as the agent of Uchiha Obito, told Kisame Kisame a way to resurrect the Jubi without capturing the 9 tails and the 8 tails. The power of the nine-tailed beasts was indeed the key to resurrecting the 10 tails. Only by gathering the characteristics of the nine-tailed beasts and a huge amount of chakra could the 10 tails be completely resurrected. But if it was only resurrecting the Jubi, it was actually not so difficult. As long as the nine-tailed beast's chakra were collected as a primer, plus a certain amount of chakra, it was actually completely possible to awaken the Jubi. Although this method may cause the Jubi's power to be somewhat incomplete, but it was also a way to awaken the Jubi. Therefore, Kisame used his shark flesh to continuously absorb the Hachibi chakra from Killer Bee's body during this period of time, in order to leave a backup plan for Uchiha Obito's Eye of the Moon plan. As long as he obtained enough Hachibi chakra as a seed, the possibility of resurrecting the Jubi would become more likely. The only regret was that he didn't collect the Nine Tails chakra, but since he had been discovered, there was nothing he could do. Therefore, Ghost Merman and Ghost Merman decided to stop while they were ahead. At the moment they were discovered, they decided to retreat. After completely integrating himself into the Sharkman's muscles, the physical fitness of Kisame has been greatly improved. Moreover, under the supply of huge chakra from the Sharkman's muscles, Kisame now has the power to surpass Kage level. Just as the Kismet Ghost Shark was using all kinds of skills and pushing his body to the limit to almost leave Naruto and Killer Bee behind, a green figure suddenly appeared in front of the Kismet Ghost Shark, blocking his way. "Aren't you that shark-faced?" Suddenly, he saw the dried persimmon ghost shark that was almost unrecognizable. Although he was a little dazed, he still recognized the dried persimmon ghost shark. After all, when he was in Konoha, Might Guy had a very fierce battle with Kisame. In the following years, for some unknown reason, many battles between Kisame and Might Guy have also taken place. After so many battles, Might Guy naturally remembered the physical features and even the aura of the Kismet Ghost Shark very clearly. However, he still couldn't remember the name of the Kismet Ghost Shark clearly. He still called the Kismet Ghost Shark by the nickname Shark Face. "Wood Leaf Rare Beast. My name is Dried Persimmon Ghost Shark. Remember it." Seeing Might Guy standing in front of him, the Kismet Ghost Shark knew that a battle between him and Might Guy was inevitable. At this moment, the Kismet Ghost Shark looked like he was born for battle. His dark blue body and the sharp spikes that appeared on his joints proved that he had completely entered the battle mode. The Kismet Ghost Shark was very unhappy that he could only run away when he saw Naruto and Killer Bee just now. Although the Might Guy in front of him could be regarded as a strong opponent before, he was now fully strengthened. The Might Guy he met before was definitely not a match for him. Since he could fight wantonly, the Kismet Ghost Shark naturally wouldn't hide his desire to attack. As long as he could defeat Might Guy quickly, he would have time to complete his plan. From the bottom of his heart, Kismet Ghost Shark also hoped that he could defeat Might Guy. After going through so many battles, Might Guy and Kismet Ghost Shark had developed a mutual appreciation for each other. Thinking that he could defeat Might Guy, who was standing in front of him, Kisame Ghost Shark's heart was actually moved a little. Chapter 574. Without any hesitation, Kisame directly rushed towards Might Guy. For a long time, Kisame gave others the impression that he was a ninjutsu-type ninja, who relied on his huge chakra to use all kinds of ninjutsu to defeat the enemy. Although he had the Seven Sword of the Mist in his hand, in fact, Kisame didn't have a particularly outstanding record in close combat. And Might Guy was also a person who had fought with Kisame several times, so he had a certain understanding of Kisame. To be honest, Kisame's taijutsu level has only reached the passing line of Jonin, but his taijutsu level isn't the strongest among Jonin. At this moment, Kisame dared to directly attack. Such behavior made Might Guy, who was proficient in taijutsu, slightly raise his vigilance. There must be a reason behind this abnormality. This principle could be applied to everything. Looking at Kisame rushing towards him, Might Guy, as a ninja who specializes in taijutsu, naturally won't be afraid of any taijutsu challenge. Kisame looked at Mike Guy, who was standing in front of him without dodging, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. After all, Mike Guy didn't take him seriously at all. Kisame also knows that close combat is his weakness, but being treated with contempt like this is unacceptable to anyone, let alone Kisame, who is a bit proud and arrogant. You rare beast, get ready to be defeated by me. Clenching a fist on his waist, chakra was constantly condensing on Kisame's fist. The powerful energy has even wrapped Kisame's fist with a layer of wind, looking quite fierce. Kisame's taijutsu is very different from Mike Guy's taijutsu. The taijutsu that Kisame is using at this moment should be called ninjutsu, which is to apply chakra to his own taijutsu, using chakra as the main application and taijutsu as an auxiliary means of combat. With the huge chakra, Kisame's fighting style without caring about the consumption of taijutsu has undoubtedly greatly increased the destructive power of Kisame's attack. Looking at Kisame who clenched his fist and attacked him, Mike Guy's face was dignified, but he had no intention of dodging. The simplest way to understand the level of a person's taijutsu is to take a punch from that person. When this punch landed on his body, as a ninja who specializes in taijutsu, it was easy for him to distinguish his opponent's physical fitness and strength. Shark face. I'm waiting for you to defeat me. To be able to have a formidable opponent in life is to have a truly youthful life. Looking at the Kismet ghost shark, Mike Guy opened his mouth and laughed out loud, revealing a row of sparkling white teeth. Hearing Mike Guy's words, even though Kisame thought that he already knew Mike Guy well enough, but he still couldn't help but have a big drop of cold sweat on his face. Sure enough, this guy wearing green tights is indeed a rare beast. What kind of environment can cultivate such a ninja? Thinking about Lankuin Orochimaru, who also joined Akatsuki, and Itachi Uchiha, who used to be his teammate, his heart was full of all kinds of feelings, but his heart was completely frozen. Would Leaf Village in the Land of Fire? It's really a different place from the ninja world. If he had the chance, Kisame really hoped that he could settle down in Wood Leaf Village for a few years, and feel how different this village is from the rest of the ninja world. Putting aside these idle thoughts, at this moment, Kisame's fist wrapped in chakra hit Mike Guy's two forearms that were crossed in front of his chest. Obviously, it was just the collision of fist and forearm, but it was like a roaring sound of a waterfall hitting a rock. Even at the moment when Kisame's fist and Mike Guy's arm intersected, a circle of airwaves appeared in the air because of the impact of the huge force. Mike Guy underestimated the strength of Kisame after the fusion with Sharkbone. At the moment when he was hit, Mike Guy's body was like a kite with a broken string, directly flying backward. After crashing into several trees and leaving a long trail of dust on the ground, Mike K's body finally came to a stop. Suddenly, there was a sweet taste in his throat, and blood oozed out of Mike Guy's mouth at this moment. Obviously, because of the impact of the huge force, Mike Guy's internal organs also suffered a certain degree of damage. Although he suffered a certain degree of damage, Mike Guy was not discouraged at this moment because Mike Guy had already roughly understood what kind of level Kisame was at this moment. At this moment, Kisame had indeed become different. If he didn't open the Hashman Tonku, then in terms of fighting ability he was indeed inferior to Kisame, but once he opened the Hashman Tonku, then Kisame was simply not enough in front of him. Open the door. Gate of rest. Gate of life. Gate of pain. Open for me. Using the chakra in his body to constantly stimulate his body, Mike Guy opened half of the Hashman Tonku in almost an instant. The originally not-so-scary aura directly erupted from Mike Guy's body at this moment. If Mike Guy without opening the Hashman Tonku was a kitten, then Mike Guy after opening the Hashman Tonku was a tiger coming down from the mountain. The proud azure beast of Woodleaf. This was what Mike Guy had always called himself. Although Kisame felt that Mike Guy was more of a rare beast than a beast, Mike Guy, who had truly entered the battle state, was definitely an opponent that couldn't be underestimated. Hearing Mike Guy's roar when he opened the Hashman Tonku, Kisame who had been standing in place after attacking Might Guy, couldn't help but be on guard. The muscles all over his body tightened. Kisame knew that the real battle between him and Might Guy had just begun. Chapter 575. Ah! In the smoke and dust, Might K's special roar appeared in Kisame's ears. Unlike the general ninja who specializes in assassination, Might K is better at direct confrontation. So this roar is in line with Might K's fighting style, to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. At the same time Might K roared, the thick smoke was like a fragile soap bubble. It was directly shaken and dispersed. Might K's body, which was wearing a green tights, was also burning with green chakra flame. The green chakra flame slowly burned on Might K's body. Coupled with Might K's white eyes and red skin, he looked full of violent power. Like a flying cannonball, Might K rushed straight towards Kisame. Looking at Might K, who seemed to be unscathed, rushing towards him, Kisame knew that now was not the time to be arrogant, and immediately began to form hand seals. Water release, water explosion shockwave. Finally, Kisame used his best water release ninjutsu. He opened his mouth, and a huge stream of water rushed out of his mouth in an unnatural way. The huge amount of water directly submerged the forest where Kisame and Might K were fighting. If it weren't for the fear of attracting Naruto and Killer Bee, Kisame could have used ninjutsu twice the scale of his current ninjutsu. Looking at the huge wave that was 10 meters tall rushing towards him, Michael Kai did not dodge. His body did not stop, but he kicked his right leg up. Wood Leaf Vajra Battle Axe Kick. Because of opening the Hashimantanku, the chakra flame that was constantly produced from his body gathered towards his raised right leg under Might K's control. The green chakra flame burned on Might K's right leg, gradually forming the shape of an axe. Break for me! When Might K shouted the last word, the huge wave had already arrived in front of Might K. Might K raised his right leg high and directly swung it down. The right leg that was burning with chakra flame in the shape of a battle axe directly chopped down on the wave. The water flow is soft as if it has no substance. All attacks that hit the water will slowly be eliminated. But at this moment, the 10-meter-high wave was directly split in half by Might K's kick like tofu. Moreover, there seemed to be wisps of smoke drifting out from the section where the waves were split apart due to the speed and strength of the attack being too fast and powerful. Although the wave was split, Might K's battle axe kick didn't lose its power. After using his kick to cut off the water waves, the force generated by the kick was like a transparent blade, rushing towards the Kisame ghost shark. Chi! The sound of the chakra energy cutting through the air was very ear-piercing. Because Kismet Ghost Shark had fused with his shark muscles, he seemed to have gained some of the sharp senses of a beast. The sense of crisis that came from his heart made Kismet Ghost Shark very clear that he couldn't take Might K's attack head-on. Kismet Ghost Shark bit his thumb and quickly made a hand gesture. Psychic technique. Thousand-eating shark. Summoned by Kismet Ghost Shark, sharks appeared in the lake water that flooded the forest. Under Kismet Ghost Shark's control, all the sharks came to the path of the chakra energy attack. They swung their tails and leaped high from the water, directly blocking the chakra energy with their bodies. Compared to the sharp strength chi blade, the shark's pure flesh and blood body was still not enough to look at. But Kismet Ghost Shark had summoned nearly 1,000 sharks. As the sharks appeared in front of the chakra energy blade, the chakra energy blade gradually weakened because these sharks used their bodies to block it. When the chakra energy blade arrived in front of Kismet Ghost Shark, it only had the appearance but no power. Kismet Ghost Shark gently waved his arm and directly met the chakra energy blade. Like brushing away a layer of dust, the chakra energy blade disappeared in the air. Looking at the nearly 1,000 sharks summoned by the Kismet Ghost Shark to defend against the powerful chi attacks, only 40 to 50 of them were left. Sharks were creatures that would go crazy after being stimulated by the smell of blood. Over 900 sharks were cut in half by the chakra energy. The blood from the dead sharks even dyed the lake red. The sharks that survived in the water were all roaming in the lake, looking a little irritable. Under the guidance of the Kismet ghost shark, the remaining 40 to 50 sharks all locked their attacks on Mike K, who had been dashing towards the Kismet ghost shark all this time. Water release, water shark bullet technique, change. Kismet ghost shark quickly formed a hand seal, then pressed his hand on the water surface. Huge chakra energy kept rushing into the water. These chakra energy streams wrapped around the remaining sharks. At this moment, these ordinary sharks seemed to be covered with a layer of armor molded by water. They directly turned from a normal 2-meter-long shark to a 5-meter-long shark, after adapting to the water flow that suddenly appeared on their bodies. The sharks seemed to realize that their bodies had been strengthened by a greater power. The group of sharks, who were a little hesitant because of Mike K's powerful aura, finally overcame their instinctive fear and rushed towards Mike K. Mike K was running on the water surface at an extremely fast speed. Looking at the calm water surface, he couldn't help but feel a sense of crisis. That hair-raising feeling made Mike K immediately slow down his speed. He stepped on the water surface forcefully, and his body slid sideways on the water surface. Just as Mike K's body slid sideways, 3 huge sharks wrapped in water shark bombs appeared where Mike K originally was, seemingly wanting to bite Mike K, who was still there just a moment ago. Chapter 576. Seeing the huge shark wrapped in the water shark bullet, Mike K's eyes not only showed no fear, but instead flashed with a glimmer of excitement. Shark face, you're really a formidable opponent, second only to Kakashi. That's it. That's it. Let the blood flowing in my body, let all the thoughts in my mind turn into a burning flame. Youth is to release the hot blood in my body. Youth is to fight with all my strength. In addition to being called the proud azure beast of Woodleaf, Mike K also had another name, Crazy K. When fighting, Mike K would always be unavoidably excited. But such excitement did not affect Mike K's fighting ability at all. Instead, it greatly improved Mike K's battle strength. The 5th gate, Gate of Limit. Open. Clenching his hands into fists, Mike K endured the pain on his body and shouted towards the sky. How long has it been? He didn't fight with all his might like now. At this moment, Mike Guy no longer had any scruples. All he had was a thirst for victory. He was like a traveler who was struggling to survive in the desert. For Mike Guy, defeating the enemy and winning was the sweet spring that sustained his life. After opening the 5th gate, Mike K's physical fitness had greatly improved. While his physical fitness had improved, Mike K's speed had also become beyond common sense. Michael K squatted down a little, and after a short period of charging, he started to move. Bang! A huge airwave was directly generated behind Mike K. Such a phenomenon was called sonic boom. It was a natural phenomenon that occurred when the speed of an object exceeded the speed of sound transmission. In layman's terms, because the speed was too fast, the resulting force began to compress the air, causing the air to explode after being compressed. Although Kisame tried his best to capture the direction of Mike K's movement with his eyes, Mike K's speed at the moment had completely exceeded the speed of the shark wrapped in the water shark bullet. After all, maintaining the water shark bullet was actually a burden for Kisame. Since he could no longer use this ninjutsu to attack or even restrain Mike K, maintaining this ninjutsu was a waste of his chakra. Water release. Water shark bullet jutsu change. The original B-class water shark bullet jutsu, after Kisame used chakra without caring about the consumption, now its power was not inferior to an S-class ninjutsu. Balls of water wrapped in chakra floated up from the water surface. Under the control of chakra, they turned into shuttles and rotated constantly. Like spinning armor-piercing bullets, these water fangs flew towards the places where Ghost Shark had predicted Mike K would pass by. Originally, it was only a single attack, but now Kisame Ghost Shark had turned it into an AoE attack. Covering the surface of the water one after another, Kisame constantly used ninjutsu to reduce Mike Guy's range of action. Although at this moment, Might Guy's speed indeed made Kisame unable to hit him no matter what kind of ninjutsu he used. But the range of Might Guy's movement was limited. Now, Kisame used his ninjutsu to continuously restrict Might Guy's movement range to a certain extent. The effect was indeed outstanding. Unless Might Guy wanted to break through Kisame's blockade regardless of the damage to his body, he could only passively take a beating. Kisame was indeed worried that if he and Might Guy fought too much, Naruto and Killer Bee would catch up with him and attack him from both sides. But for Might K, he was also very worried about time. Although the 8 inner hidden gates were powerful, the burden on the human body was too heavy. For him, the 8 inner hidden gates could only be regarded as a trump card, not a means that he could use frequently. At this moment, after fighting with Kisame for a while, Might Guy could already feel that his body was beginning to be overwhelmed. He could even vaguely hear a whining sound coming from the depths of his body. I can't be suppressed by Kisame like this. Might Guy only had such a thought in his mind. After fighting for such a long time, he didn't even leave any scars on Kisame's body. Such a battle could almost be said to be fruitless, and Might Guy couldn't bear such a battle. Pressing his thumb on his body, Might Guy poured his chakra into his fingertips. In this way, Might Guy once again opened the next gate of the 8 inner hidden gates. The 6th gate, Gate of View, open. When opening the Gate of View, Might Guy didn't roar as loudly as before. Instead, he said such words in a low and hoarse voice. When Might K hid all his rage in the bottom of his heart, his low voice sounded like that of a god who was judging the world. His eyes that had completely turned white stared straight at Kisame, who was standing behind the water splashed by the water. Obviously, there was no trace of emotion on his face, but Kisame's heart couldn't help but feel a chill that was difficult to dispel. Stepping on the water with his feet, Might Guy's body directly jumped high into the air. Under normal circumstances, ninjas avoid floating in the air. After all, in the state of having no leverage in the air, their body almost becomes a target. But at this moment, Might Guy obviously had a deep meaning, so he floated his body in the air. While floating in the air, Might Guy's body began to exude a powerful aura. Even his originally ridiculous watermelon head started to move without wind under the influence of the powerful aura produced by Might Guy, showing a powerful power. In the blink of an eye, Michael K's arms and legs became illusory. This was a phenomenon produced when Might Guy punched and kicked at a very high speed. Because his arms and legs were constantly waving, the friction in the air caused a cluster of orange flames to appear out of thin air, wrapping Might Guy's body. This move is Morning Phoenix. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.